across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
With Mark Dolan? No. With Ian Collins. In for Jeremy Kyle, or is it in for Mark Dolan? Who knows? Jezza is back on Monday. Lots to get through. Andy Burnham, the man who wants to be our next Prime Minister, has hit back at Tony Blair. There's a right old battle going on here. Mr Burnham has called for more state control. He wants to end what he calls 40 years of neoliberalism. Yeah, if anyone knew what that actually meant, we could decide whether he was onto something or not. We'll look at that. Also, would you pay to see a GP? Doctors are set to vote on the idea of charging for a kind of Netflix-style subscription service, much like dentists would do. Do you support such a move? Would it make the NHS more efficient and greater value for money? The much-awaited Alan Milburn report came out in full yesterday, as you will have heard here on Talk. We can bring you the highlights, both of them. Essentially, young people don't want to work, but it's not their fault. That seems to be encapsulating the moment. Let me ask you this. If you're an employer or you run a small business, what is your assessment of young people in the workplace? Are they just full of anxiety and crippled with troubles and woe? Or simply unreliable, unrealistic and bone idle? What is the reality? And is it a British thing as well? Nicola Sturgeon says she's enjoyed the worst week of her life after her husband was found guilty of that £500,000, just shy of, worth of embezzlement. We've actually uncovered the best clip, and we're going to play this here, the best clip you will have ever heard. This comes under the headline of words that come back to haunt you. It's an absolute beauty. And by the way, what was the worst week of your life? Or we'll take worst day of your... You know when everything just stacks against you, one thing after another. You can message us on that, 0344 499 1000. And let them eat hake. Fish and chip bosses are trying to get Brits to try different types of fish in order to save struggling chip shops. How do you fancy a portion of pollock instead of your standard cod? It's Fish and Chip Friday, of course. Your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here at the home of common sense on Talk. And, of course, you can message 87222. We also have Steve N. Allen with us, which is fantastic. Comedian, writer, broadcaster and good bloke. How are you, Steve?
I'm not. Well, after that intro, I'm 10% better, thank you.
10%?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, I don't want to start too... I don't want to give away too much.
I know. Exactly. We can work upwards from there, can't we? Which is good. Nice to see you, Steve. Lots to get through. I think we need to start with the Nicola Sturgeon. Do we start with Nicola Sturgeon? Only because this clip has emerged, which is you know, there's always a clip, isn't it? There's always a receipt now. There's always a tweet. There's all that. And this is just, at every level, this just works brilliantly. So this was from, was it Christian 2022? 2022, when she appeared on News Round. And they're always excruciating moments, a bit like, you know, when they do a school's question time, it's like, no, get in the bin. We don't want a school's question time. I've got no interest in what 12-year-old Ben from Haverstock thinks about anything, frankly. But they do these things. They're all very worthy. And they did a series on News Round, which is still going. John Craven apparently no longer there. That was a surprise to me when I tuned in last.
He was retired to the country, wasn't he?
He
literally put out to pasture.
I think he's now been retired from the pasture.
Really?
Yes.
Where did he go next?
He features once a year on Countryfile, and that's to plug the calendar.
Is he still doing nudes?
He's still doing nudes.
Yeah,
yes,
the calendar.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Happens to us all.
Craven is great at that stuff. So Nicola Sturgeon is, I assume News Round did a kind of series of, you know, political leaders, and they get a load of kids to ask questions that are clearly given to the kid, because no child would have any interest in this stuff. No 7-year-old would give a hoot about the cost of living crisis, wouldn't even understand the phrase. So anyway, that's the setup of the piece. So this is Nicola Sturgeon appearing on Question Time. There's two lovely moments in this clip. Let's have a listen.
Well, on that note, Kevin, do you want to ask your question to the First Minister? Go for it.
How has the cost of living crisis affected your household?
But, Kevin, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that somebody like me in the job I do, which is, you know, paid well by comparison to lots of people across the country, I'm experiencing the cost of living crisis in the same way that many other people are, because I think if I was to pretend that that was the case, you would look at me and think, are you sure? Nevertheless, and the other admission I have to make here straight up is that my husband does most of the shopping in my household, so, but, you know, he notices, like everybody else does, the way things are going up in price in the supermarkets.
Particularly the cost of a camper van. So there it is. He does most of the shopping. Yeah, we know that. He really does do most of the shopping. Quite a lot of it as well. Ostentatious little
badger. Quite a bit of gardening as well.
That is. A lot of gardening.
What are you burying out there? Nothing?
Nothing to see here. So there it is, Sturgeon, the worst week of Sturgeon's life.
Yeah, and I mean, she claims that she knew nothing about it. All of the accusations apparently made her, she was very upset.
Yes.
Well, I heard someone say she was a little cranky. And I just had to get that out there, just clean the pipes of that joke. No, look, obviously for legal reasons, I can't say that I don't believe that she didn't know. What I will say is I can't get an Amazon thing delivered to my house without my missus wanting to know what it is. So if suddenly a camper van turns up, there'd be a question, maybe two, at least. Yeah.
And even though apparently the camper, I know we've been over this every day, but it is always worth a revisit. The camper van apparently was at his mother's, and the story just got better this week. So she didn't even know. She said in her statement, she said the biggest item on the list, the camper van and something else, because he also bought a Jaguar as well, for 65 grand, 85 grand, I think.
Inflation.
She said the biggest thing on this, I didn't even know existed. Now, that was somewhat contradicted by a guy who, a couple of years ago, saw her in Asda. And she was in Asda queuing to pay. She had a pizza, a frozen pizza she'd gone to Asda for.
Yeah.
And some garlic bread, the full Peter K. You know,
garlic bread?
Yeah. She was in the queue and talking to another customer, and this fella overheard her say something on the lines of, I've got, what was it, Christian? I've got my... Oh, yeah, I think the person said something like, I don't see you around here very often. She said, my mother-in-law lives in the area. So if she was in the local Asda, local to her mother-in-law, one might assume, and of course we can't say for sure, she may just like going to Asdas that are further away from her house.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
It could be that, or it could be that she did visit her mother-in-law's but just didn't see a massive camper van parked in the driveway.
Yeah.
But it's always possible to avoid
Even it is, I suppose. You know, if you're not really paying attention, you just think, who's parked this camper van? Isn't it a nightmare when people park these incredibly expensive camper vans? The Jag, even look, honestly, my missus knows all the details of what's going on. I would not be able to do any of the, whatever the correct verb is, the embezzle, the fraud, whatever he's pled guilty to, whatever it is. I know for legal reasons we can't say that I thoroughly don't believe that she didn't know. And I'll leave that sentence there.
I mean, we can be sceptical, can't
Yeah.
we? We have healthy level of scepticism. Laws of probability and all that kind of stuff.
If I turned up with a jag of any sort,
yes,
I'm sure my missus would be like, where's all this money coming from?
The most curious thing, you've got a lot of curious things. A onesie was one thing. I can't now unsee the image of Murrell in his onesie. On Sea Wing, maybe it's taking it with him, I don't know. But the curious one was he bought an oak library ladder.
Well, look, no one's going to go for balsa. If you've got a library ladder, you need a load-bearing wood, Ian. Look, I'm up for judging these people as much as the next man, but cut him some slack. What wood would you go for?
We were just... Because that's obviously the question. What would you...
That's today's phone-in.
That's today's phone-in. What is your library ladder made of? I think balsa we've discounted.
Of course.
Completely.
Pine, what are you, an idiot?
Yeah, paper mache is never going to work.
I'd take a chestnut.
Now, I looked at the house they lived in. It's a sort of standard middle-class detached house, neat and tidy, clipped. It's almost like, it's ever-decreasing circles set territory. You know, it's that in that. Richard Bryars lived next door. It was that kind of house. I don't think if there is a library in it, because people can have their own library. I mean, most of us just call them bookshelves, but some people say, I've got a library at home. Yeah. Some people say, I've got a cinema room. No, you've got a room with a television in it. That's not a cinema. Telly, yeah. It doesn't really count. In that room, in that house, I can't imagine you could get a library that required an oak ladder.
I suppose there is...
To get to the furthest book.
Yeah, there is a... Well, let's remember her height. So
that's a very good point.
There is a chance that it was just a small
He bought
ladder.
it for Nicola.
Yeah. And you're telling me she didn't know about it. There is a chance he just takes it down the library. Some people prefer their own ladder. Even if you're going to the municipal library, you might be thinking, I'm not going to use their one. It's covered in germs.
Well, I had to put some pictures up on my little boy's wall this week, and they had to go sort of high up on the wall, and his room's got slightly higher ceilings than other rooms. Bit weird like that. Not him, the room, although he is. And I had to stand on a little stool to knock the picture hook into the wall.
Yeah.
Now, you do that sometimes, but you'd buy a stool, wouldn't you? One of those open flap things that you can sit nicely in a cupboard.
There's nothing wrong with the step ladder.
I don't think I would have needed an oak library ladder to put a picture of Ronaldo in my child's bedroom.
Yeah, true. Look, but when you've got that much money sloshing around, you don't know, when you have to Brewster's Millions this, you don't know what kind of tat you buy. I've not got oak ladder money.
Yes.
But if I had, maybe I would be having that. In my last relationship, when we had a lovely little place, I bought a step ladder, and what broke my heart is I weighed more than the maximum working load of that ladder.
Really?
That hurts. Finding out.
Yes, but who was it aimed at?
Smaller, thin pig jockeys, I imagine.
Jockey
the old
ladder.
jockey ladder.
Go on Amazon, have a look for jockey ladder. Who knows what might show up.
And that's without taking tools up with me as well. Just me, fully naked, would have been too much.
You
for
would
that
have
ladder.
still been over the top on in the weight department.
That's a wake-up call.
It is the most curious story, the Sturgeon thing. He's obviously going to jail because he's now currently on remand. And I always think with any of those kind of characters, people who've lived sort of previously unblemished lifestyles, never got a speeding ticket, or they've lived a life of opulence. You think of some of those dirty old goats like Harvey Weinstein and people like that. The distance they fall when they find themselves in prison is greater than, Mick the old lag from Bethnal Green, who's been in and out all his life. I don't say that with any sympathy, by the way. I mean, the sheer horror for those people. So Murrell this won't be sort of Ronnie Barker sort of porridge territory, having a giggle with the lads on Sea Wing. I don't imagine.
Yeah, but that means Jeffrey Archer just wrote more books, so they adapt.
Archer was a good lag. Your favourite lag, please. 0344 499 1000. I liked Ronnie Biggs, of course.
Yeah,
good old
classics.
Ronnie. He's absolutely, don't make them like that no more. And the one, who was the other Conservative? Aitken. Was it Jonathan Aitken? Jonathan Aitken, who went to jail.
Yes. What are you going to jail for?
For what's it called? Lying in court. What's the
perjury?
Perjury. Yeah, it's a perjury thing, I think.
Let's retrospectively guess people's crimes. That
I know.
Wrong,
there you go. Guess the crime. Here's the criminal. What was the crime? I think it was in similar department to Jeffrey Archer. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's in that ballpark.
Because you've got to be careful, because he will sue you, and in court he will say anything.
Well, that's true.
Be careful.
Literally. Yeah, you can't fight these people. But actually what he did, Aitken did, because Aitken was he'd started TVAM and things like that. He was, you know, he knew Thatcher. Thatcher then didn't like him because apparently he wouldn't date her daughter or something. There was all these kind of rumours around, or did date her daughter and ditched her or something of that nature. But anyway, what Aitken did when he was in prison, he helped prisoners, because it's his first experience. Here's this Oxbridge privately educated posh boy shows up on, again, the apocryphal C Wing, and nobody could read or write. He couldn't work. He couldn't believe it. So he began to become. He became the letter writer. He was the brains of the wing.
Yeah.
You know, if it was a sitcom, there would be that character.
And people leave you alone then, don't
they leave you alone because he writes the letters for you, the letters to your solicitor, the letters to you. They would read out letters from relatives because they couldn't read, a lot of these guys. And he dedicated his life to that. Came out, became a vicar afterwards, and as kind of. You know, he's an older guy now. We've had him on a couple of times, and he must be in his, I don't know, I'm tempted to say early to mid-80s.
Yeah. So it does work.
Well, it did in that respect. Yeah. He turned it around.
Now I'm thinking that was just a bit of perjury. That's not even that much of a... I'd probably walk that off. You know, it's not the worst crime to then have to fully turn your life around. What year did he do that in? Because that is the plot of the Shawshank Redemption.
1999. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison. He served 7 months. He was accused... I remember this now. And I remember the press conference. Aitken was accused by The Guardian of misdeeds conduct under his official government capacity. He sued the newspaper. See, this is it. He sued the newspaper for libel. Such was the self-belief, the smugness of this man, that he sued them. And it was subsequently found that he'd committed perjury. And he gave this big speech. And it was on the lines, I'm going to have to paraphrase. He said something like, I will use my trusty sword of truth to cut out the cancer of lies, or something like that. And The Guardian came along 2 days later and went, have you seen this receipt? And it was like, oh.
And also, you don't use swords to cut out cancer. Many things were wrong with that.
They used to.
In the olden days.
They gave it a go back then.
But what year did Shawshank
King
come
Arthur
out?
was riddled.
I think he just nicked the idea from the Shawshank Redemption. If he goes to prison, he teaches people to read, exactly what Andy Dufresne did. Yeah. Was there at any point where he... Thank you. My old
Bit
friend.
of Morgan.
Andy Dufresne. Did he ask for a poster of Rita Hayworth? Because if that happened, he was trying to tunnel.
Indeed.
Yeah, if he'd have been
Pull
in for
the
longer,
blue tack off and out you go.
Yeah. Short term, he just had a small indentation in the wall.
The Rita Hayworth flick, which means many things on TV.
You can't say that.
I did. But yeah, so he was so smug about it that he actually sued them when he knew he was wrong. And when they showed this receipt, it was something about he'd stayed in a hotel, or that might have been, was that the Jeffrey Archer one? But it was in the ballpark. They had the receipts, quite literally, and he went to jail, but he rediscovered himself. So how will Peter Murrell come out of jail? There's another phone-in for you.
He's going to have a great holiday in that big old camper van. That's the thing, the camper van was just left there as well. In many ways, that's what I feel sorry for.
Well, did anybody ever? Nobody's mentioned the mileage, because we know that there was a journey from where it was purchased. It then went somewhere to be serviced or something. This is I think from police reports. Then it went to the driveway. I want to know.
Yeah.
Was it ever used?
You tell me it's got low mileage and it's been serviced. I'm interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one careful owner, not that careful when it comes to paperwork.
Did we know that it might have a library at the top of it? In that little, that little glass bit on the top of those things?
It is quite high. You will need a ladder.
You might need a ladder for that.
Don't do balsa.
Don't do balsa. Maybe the ladder was not light. It was a library ladder, but it was actually used for unlocking those tricky, unfathomable catches on things like caravans. And it's a bit like, you know this as a father. The first time, talk about the worst day of your life. The first time someone said, "Here's a car seat.
Oh yeah,
just put it in the back of the car." Christian knows this. Like, oh, okay, what could go wrong?
Yeah.
An hour later, you are pulling your hair out, going, "What? This is impossible."
It's fully Krypton factor, isn't it?
It's full Krypton factor, and this cannot be the case. There's no way this is going. And the first time ever in your life you discover your car has these hook things stuffed in the seats. that connect a car seat, of course. You don't really know they're there if you haven't got kids.
Well, they're hidden away behind a thing. Plus, also, if you go into the boot, sometimes there's a strap that goes up and down to another little latch to hold them from the top. Yeah, I remember, I've 2 kids now, so the first one, it was a full day's project. Managed to get them secured. First time they were secured, there's too much wiggle room. You can't have lateral motion in case of side impact. So I had to go in again, really tighten it up. And yet, everyone was coming around going, to the mum, you've been through so much, how was the birth? What do you mean the birth? It took me longer to do the car seat than it did for her to push the kid out.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And then I had the haunting reality, because there's 4 years between our two, because I thought we still got that car seat in the loft, we're home and dry. And then 2 things happened almost simultaneously. One was our eldest needed a different car seat, so that had to be replaced. And then you get one that twists round.
Yeah.
You know that thing? So
a lazy Susan.
Yeah, a lazy Susan of the car seat. So you twist it round and it says on the, I've got the instructions right here. It says, just click this button. There isn't a button. There is no button. Just click this button. There is no button. I'm looking at it. There's no button. Just click this button. Oh, the button is hidden under a plastic panel, which covers another plastic panel on the rear. That button. Yeah, you might have said that in the instructions. So I get through that. And then when the next baby arrives, she says, I think we should just get a new car seat as well for him. So we'll just get rid of the old one. The one I'd stuffed in the loft 4 years ago and went to the back of the loft to get out for the birth of the new. All of that. So maybe Murrell had catchment issues.
Yes.
Based on
level.
the car seat thing.
Yeah.
Hence he needed a ladder.
Yeah. I take it all back. All the harsh things I've said about them, now it all makes so much sense. If anything, I'm supporting them.
This from Dave in Aberdeen. Morning, Ian. I had a step ladder. Sadly, never knew my real ladder.
We're trying to do serious news
Have you thought of
reportage.
ringing Nicky Campbell? Because he'll help you out on that. Don't worry. He'll find it.
He'll cry.
This one in from Sarah near Plymouth, who says, don't give us half a story. What topping was on Sturgeon's pizza from Asda? Was it caviar? Boom, boom. That's a very good point. We don't know. I would imagine that the Sturgeons and the Murrells would be basic margarita.
Well, I think if you're called sturgeon, you don't eat caviar, because that'd feel wrong, wouldn't it?
So, I didn't even get the gag until you've just explained it. Sorry, I was just going with it as in sort of a gag of opulence.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Sarah.
She's
I completely underestimated Sarah's comedic abilities.
Yeah. Never again should you judge.
I'm going margarita for that one. And this one from Graham says, I've just heard that clip of Nicola Sturgeon and laughed out loud. Sounds like Sturgeon's doing a Starmer saying she didn't know. She didn't know anything, Graham, apparently. Bless her. Steve Ann Allen is with us. We've got more stories to cover. I say more stories. We haven't covered any yet, really, of any substance. We've just sort of riffed on Sturgeon ladders. We are going to talk about lazy kids. Because it's never popular to say, well, kids are all just bone idle, aren't they? Hey, don't want to do a day's work. There is a bit of that. When we talk, there's a bit of... It's not about bone idle, because the young person's perception of what work is and expectations around work has shifted. In the same way that you say, anxiety, you haven't got depression, you just got a bit of anxiety. But to that person, they have mild depression or anxiety. So all the markers of what once was have kind of moved. This, I think, was Milburn's assessment, that kids want to work. Or do they? If you run a small business, we're all ears. We'll come to that one as well in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 27 minutes after 6 o'clock. That issue of your favourite lag, it's just strange how we get onto these kind of things. Let's get a voice note on this very point from Matt. Morning, Matt.
Good morning, Ian. Matt in Warrington. Favourite lag? Person who's been banged up, who shouldn't have been banged up. Really nice character, loved by the nation. Deirdre Barlow. Do you remember the Free Deirdre Barlow campaign? Got mentioned in House of Commons and everything. Yeah, she was the one, Deirdre Barlow. Anyway, great show.
Matt, thank you very much indeed. I remember the Free Deirdre campaign.
Free Weatherfield 1 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was an absolute outrage that Barlow was behind the behind bars.
Do you remember when that was the biggest problem in this nation? Like, literally, the government would pay attention to that. Amazing.
Why did Deirdre go to jail?
Perjury.
Do you think it was? It was something to do with that fella she was seeing, wasn't it? And he was a con man or something, and...
Yes, because by then she'd left Ken. It's not Ken's fault.
No, it wasn't Ken.
Deirdre Rashid or something by then was her name, wasn't it?
Yeah, him. I think it was him. And then there was the other guy who was said he was an airline pilot, and he wasn't an airline pilot.
Deirdre.
Deirdre. It all centred around Deirdre. We had, years ago when I was on TalkSport, I had Ken Barlow come in as a guest, and it was possibly the weirdest thing looking at Ken Barlow. This is a person that's been on the television since I've been alive.
Yeah.
He's never not been on the television. So when you see somebody like Ken Barlow, your brain tells you it's someone wearing a Ken Barlow mask. It's like, that's not real. That's it. That's actually him. It's not like, you know, when you see somebody on the telly and you go, oh, they don't quite look as I thought they were going to look. There's something slightly different about them. They're not as tall. He was everything that he is on the telly. Sounded the same, looked the same, his mannerisms were the same. I thought, this is too real. The only other person that did that to me was Jerry Springer when he came in for almost the same reason. Because he's his face is almost a caricature of himself.
Yeah. Well, also, no offence to Ken Barlow, or whatever his name is, but Bill Roach. Right?
Bill Roach,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was acting. I think if you're in soaps, quite often they're not acting, are they? You play yourself so much that it's not like, oh, you're thoroughly different in real life. You know, not the woman who played Pam St Clements, whatever.
Pam St Clements, yeah, in EastEnders.
Thoroughly different. Sounds posh in real life. That's like she's had a stroke and has a different accent.
You meet those people sometimes, and that's always quite a reveal, isn't it? I remember Jerry Springer. He came in and he'd come over to the UK for some reason, and he was doing "Have I Got News for You?" the night that he was. The next day after he was, the evening or something of the day he was in with me, and I just remember he said, you know, this Angus character that, you know, used to present this show, what happened to him then? I said, well, it was a lot of tabloid stuff, you know. There was, you know, the allegations. It was, you know, the headline said cocaine and hookers, and, you know, nights out that lasted forever, and, you know, and he considered the words, my explanation. He said, so what was the downside? It was just a beautiful Springer moment. And then when he left the studio at the old TalkSport, he was absolutely mobbed in the street. It wasn't a particularly busy road. It's just that every single person that walked out of the building knew who he was. Right. It wasn't, you know, when you meet a famous person in the street, and you think, is that Ian Beale? It looks a bit like him. Yeah. And the bigger they are, it's even harder. You know, there's someone who looks like Robert De Niro. It might be Robert De Niro.
But you wouldn't believe
but
Robert
Springer,
De Niro's an Asda.
Yeah, exactly. Springer, it's like, that's Jerry Springer. And he just stopped diligently for about an hour and spoke to people outside. But he loved all of that. I think he'd had his own previous as well with sort of, you know, issues around the aforementioned. So. Yeah,
I saw there's a Netflix documentary about that show.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, there is, isn't there? Yeah.
some dodgy stuff happened.
It was the trailblazer for quite a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, without Jerry Springer, we wouldn't have had Trisha, Vanessa. I mean, I know I'm sat in this room and who often presents on this stuff. I wonder who else wouldn't have been around.
Do you know there was one that nobody remembers this? So there was, I think...
Can I guess what you're going to say? Robert Kilroy Silk?
No.
Oh.
Kilroy Silk. Yeah. Kilroy, I like.
We wouldn't have Brexit if it weren't for Jerry Springer.
We would, exactly, yes. It all links up, doesn't it? Robert Kilroy Silk did Kilroy on the BBC. Vanessa just did Vanessa. When she went, Trisha Goddard took over. And both of those people have worked here, by the way. But in the mix of all of this, a short-lived, same format programme called The Crystal Rose Show.
No, that's a stripper name.
You'd think so.
Yeah. I would have been very disappointed.
Crystal Rose, and I'm sure I think I Googled her recently, and that I've been onto the Google boys in the history department ever since. But the Crystal Rose, you can't erase this stuff. Show me Crystal Rose, please. Yeah, and I don't know. I never saw her again. I don't know what happened. Somebody set my brain at ease, please. 87222. Am I the only bloke that did I make up an entire TV show called The Crystal Rose Show? It had a really cheesy jingle. Crystal Rose Show. One of those kind of things.
No, I'm not buying it. You had a fever cheese dream. That's what happened. You had some late night cheese. You dreamt the entire
late night margarita from Asda.
Yeah. Some sturgeon on top. Yeah, no, I don't remember any of it. And I love all this old rubbish, so I think you're making it up.
Definitely, I could be making it. Definitely sat in that slot. It sat in that slot of, daytime chat shows.
Yeah. Which, yeah. But if without
Robert the other one, John Stapleton. It was a bit more highbrow. John Stapleton did it. The Time, the Place. You must remember that one.
Was that one of those Central TV? Is it ITV?
No, there was a Central. I went up there once to do a Central TV one, and Nikki Campbell
was doing it. Yeah,
Andrew Neil used to sometimes do it, and I went up there, so I was booked. So you would be booked. They'd have an audience, and then they would book some voices that were sort of in the audience.
Right.
And sat there.
Word is
about
planned. You can say planned.
Yeah, it's sort of planned a little bit. Well, because if it's not, it just becomes disjointed. So there's got to be a bit of structure to it. Hour and a half recording, never said a word. Never said a single word. Unbelievable. £100 in my pocket, taxi drive home, and never said a single word. And I was glad, actually, because they weren't that interesting subjects. It was like, no, I wasn't glad. I was bemused, but I had nothing to add.
Right. So, but then you're just in the background of a TV show. It's like people will be watching repeats or something, like finding you in the back of Top of the Pops, which actually you don't want to do that these days. There's
no,
that's even worse than your
really
search
don't
history.
Want to be discovered on an old reel in the back of Top of the Pops, because you'd start looking for things, wouldn't you? The clues were there, maybe. Let's just before we pause, I want to play this Alan Milburn clip because this is the more serious stuff. This is young people not in work. There's over 1 million young people. That figure is set to increase in the next to the point of 1 in 6, which is a jaw-dropping number. You try to imagine what 1 in 6 under 25 looks like. That's a whole lot of people. So this was Alan Milburn. He'd written this report. They trickled out different headlines over the course of the last week. We discussed it each day that they did. There was social media and, of course, getting into the workplace. Yesterday, Mr. Milburn, former government minister, back in the Blair days and the like and the Brown days, he took to the podium. Long bit of research he'd gone into. There were graphs and pie charts and spreadsheets and all sorts of things. This is what he said about young people not in work, education or training.
There is no singular explanation for the NEET problem worsening, but there is one standout change. Over the past decade, the proportion who say they're NEET due to a work-limiting health condition has increased by 70%. The proportion of NEETs citing mental health or conditions like ADHD and autism as their primary condition has more than doubled.
So it's more than doubled. Now, I don't think you have to be a cynic. I think a medic would probably say that's probably not a fully accurate insight. The idea that any condition in a matter of a few years had doubled, we either have redefined the condition. Do people suddenly catch autism or ADHD? I don't think so. Are people just more forthcoming in having it diagnosed? Or are we transposing a bit of anxiety for something greater?
You know, even if you give it the most gracious analysis and you think, OK, we were misdiagnosing or not diagnosing enough, so we were missing these cases. Now that we know more about it, people will come forward and get diagnosed. But it still implies that roughly the same number of people would have had these conditions decades ago and still worked. So regardless of whether we can identify the diagnosis is, I see it, it's a graph and great, but it shouldn't impact the number of people who are in work, which is the core issue here. This is why we're going to suddenly hit the buffers when the economy fails, because there's not enough people in work. If you can tap out of work, here's my uneducated belief on this. If you learn about anxiety before you learn about how hard life is, you'll think you're having a particularly rough time. I think life is harder than it is easier.
Way to put it. Yeah.
It's not an absolute walk in the park. Most of life isn't happiness. Yeah. And if challenges come along and you haven't learned, oh, I've got to fight these challenges. Oh, I've got to put the effort in and overcome my challenges. If the first lesson you're taught is, no, you better go and get a diagnosis and some medication.
So when a younger person says, I can't go to work today, I'm anxious, in their mind, that is real. I think this is the point that really, Milburn's put it very, very politely. But so that is real to that person, and not going to work is a genuine option. Yeah. That isn't up for debate. I have anxiety, therefore that's a mental health condition, which, let's be honest, is a spectrum that is, you know, wider than the Mersey. I mean, this is, you know, a big kind of pie chart of possibilities under that same umbrella. So to that kid, it's real. So they're not doing anything wrong. So they have anxiety days built in now.
Yeah.
And going into the workplace, having somebody tell them what to do in a different way to a teacher would tell you what to do, is, to some, it's not palatable. You can't talk to me like that. No, I've only just asked you to move the bag, because that's literally, we've employed you as the bag mover. Look, there it is on the floor. You applied for it. Look. And a friend of mine ran a hairdresser salon in Ashford, and he was saying that he had a girl come in. This was a little bit before all of this, but not so long before. He said a girl came in, and it was her first day, and she walked in, and the first thing she did was sit down. She came in, and she went, oh, I'm really tired. And she just sat down in one of the seats. And he said, just jokingly, he said, do you want a stall for your feet? And he pulled up a stall. She went, oh, thanks, and stuck her feet on it. And it was like, yeah, that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
So it's entitlement without using it as a kind of pejorative. It's just, that's a genuine observation. That was his view. You know, she believed that was okay.
Yeah.
She wasn't horrible. She wasn't, but it turned out she was quite bone idle because she didn't have an ethic. And 2 days later, she called in sick. It's her first day, her first job.
I think I'm bone idle too, but I grew up in a time where I didn't have an option. If I'd have had the option, I'd be doing less. But I think in the 80s and 90s, if you had anxiety or bone idleness or whatever it is, you still felt you had to work because of societal expectations. Back in the 1940s, if you didn't do it, you'd just starved.
Indeed. Let's get a word on this, a voice note on young people in the workplace. It comes from Anna. Morning, Anna.
So my assessment of young people in the workplace, 18 and under, if they do turn up, they are bone idle and they cannot put their phones down. 18 and over, postgrads, entitled, arrogant half-wits who have only managed to pass a few exams after years of study and can barely function. Let me tell you the best people to employ: 45 and over, punctual, articulate, enthusiastic, don't mind getting their hands dirty. Wonderful people. I'm sorry, youth out there. This is on you. You all need a change of attitude. Stop worrying about whether Frank's a woman and how pink or blue your hair is, and wobble your heads. Sorry, Ian, not for much sympathy from me.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of information to get through here. It's amazing how fast-paced this show is, and our audience, I say this all the time, are just the very best. I mean, the very best. There's always lots of information coming through. This from Diane, who says, just Google Crystal Rose TV show, aired on Carlton TV in 1993, so you haven't dreamt it, but I defo wasn't aware of it. But is anybody aware of it? Dave, our tech op this morning, and that was a surprise. Nobody told me about that. Had they told me, I wouldn't be here. We love Dave. He's going. I've just given Dave anxiety. Dave's done a bit of research. There were 103 Crystal Rose shows.
Wow.
So substantial enough.
Where was Carlton TV? Maybe this is why. Was it just regional? Not networks across ITV?
I don't think it can. Carlton TV was obviously London. It was after Thames TV, wasn't it?
Right. See, I was a Central guy.
No, but I was a Meridian guy. But I saw the Crystal Rose show, so I think it was one of those, every now and again.
Was the aerial pointing the wrong way? Because sometimes that was a thing, wasn't it? If the aerial went the other way, you got the next door neighbour. You got the next door neighbour,
yeah. No, because there was always that thing, wasn't there, that every now and again, it's a little bit like Anglia TV. None of us would have ever heard of had it not been for Sale of the Century. That's how everybody knows Anglia TV. Yeah. And then there was Yorkshire TV used to knock out a couple of shows that go national.
Not many from Yorkshire, though, if we're brutally honest.
Countdown.
Of course, yeah, Richard Wiley. But I was up there, and to where we lived, our aerial pointed the wrong way. We got Yorkshire TV, or you could point and get Birmingham's TV Central. Yeah. It was a while when I was growing up. We didn't have East Midlands Central. I feel left out. The part of the country that gave this nation Robin Hood, and well, obviously they came from Yorkshire. It's a bad example. We gave them nothing. But where was our TV?
Pebble Mill. No, that was BBC, wasn't it? But BBC Birmingham, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to university near there. I used to walk past the old Pebble Mill.
Did you see through the windows as they were recording stuff?
Oh, no, we went to see it because it was free. It was a free night out. Ross King doing some hosting.
Ross King, he's still knocking around, Ross. He hasn't stopped, that fella.
He can't afford to.
There was a lot of... Pebble... But the regional stuff, and I still do this. When you go to a hotel room, this is a gigging comedian, you go to a hotel room and you put, like, the local news on in the area that you're in, and it's always like, oh, no, it's kind of the same, but it's different news.
With a really old man who should have retired by now and a very attractive young woman. And yet we've not addressed that issue yet. It's great.
Well, no, they did in BBC Radio. They just got rid of the men.
That's why you're here.
Indeed, yes, we know this. Lots going on at this end. We're talking about young people. I thought, by the way, Anna's voicemail was brilliant that we played just before the last break. The best people to employ are over 45. So I'm interested if you run a small business, if you're a one-man band, and the idea of employ... is there a tangible... Is it an urban myth that we just say, oh, young... they're bone idle, and even if they're not bone idle, their heart's not in it. I was reading something in one report, it might have been something to do with this, where a kid was asked to make a phone call, and they did not know what to do. I mean, almost didn't know how to do it, but the idea they were going to have to speak on a phone because they'd never done it.
It's a Gen Z trait, isn't it, that they fear phone calls? If you want to paralyse one of them, call them, and as soon as their phone screen changes from what they want to be looking at, which I'm guessing is social media, to the thing that's the cool incoming thing, they just panic. They just freeze.
Freddie says, I take much issue with your previous voice noter. I think this will be Anna he's referring to. I'm 24. I've worked since I was 15 in various jobs, gardening, manual labour, etc. Fully appreciate this is not the same most of my age, but don't paint us all with the same brush. We need more apprenticeships that the government have just removed. That is the answer. And one of the problems, and thank you, Freddie, for that, and it's good to hear as well, one of the problems apparently is that they've just made it massively expensive. So companies are, you've got a bloke who's a window cleaner. He's asked to pay an apprentice 16,000 quid. Yeah. With no, I mean, it's a massive risk. We had a message on that yesterday. I don't think he was a window cleaner, but the same point, that, that's a big punt to take. Yeah. And then there's all that, and you're entitled to, holiday pay and
from
all
day
sorts
one.
From day one, it's like, just bring back the old days when you could turn up on a building site, do some hod carrying, learn the job, and if you were rubbish, the gaffer would say, mate, sorry, it's not working out, fella, here's a tenner, go and buy yourself a drink, never darken my doorstep again. Those days.
But you needed that lesson. Because if you didn't realise your attitude was not going to be giving you a full career, you wouldn't have changed. And then that's just the thing. You need to learn resilience before you learn how to just sit down and panic about stuff. And part of resilience is being fired or being told you're not good at a job. First job I ever did was a Wednesday job working in a printing factory in Huthwaite, where they printed the Doncaster Free Press. And we used to have to like pick up a pile of newspapers, take them to a table where the old women would just put all the inserts in, and you put them and band, the machines that do the banding thing.
Yeah.
Until you've had a job where you think you might lose fingers.
I was about to say, they could take your fingers off.
Well, I mean, the guy who teaches you how to do it shows you, when they've been doing it so long, they just leave their hand in, clink, 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 clink. No. And my second job was in a factory that made boxes out of tin, and there was an old guy there who's, on the first day, he said, how long are you working here for then? So I made 6 weeks through the summer. By the end of that, you'll learn to respect tin. And I did. I've still got the scars.
Do you know, my mum, I don't know why she took this job, but it was the only job she really had of... she was a dinner lady, and she later went back to being a dinner lady. So it wasn't the only job she ever had, so I don't know why I said that. She had many. But it was the main job she had when we were growing up, and she worked in a plate metal factory. And she was, on her first day, she goes into this thing, and it's lots of oil and noise and machines going clank and thump non-stop. No one had any headphones on to ear protectors or anything like that. And the guy that taught her, this is absolutely true, was a fella whose name was One-Armed Joe. And you can write the rest, and it's true. Why, Joe, why are you One-Armed Joe? Yeah, lost the art. Where did you lose it? That machine over there. Really? You're working here training people?
You're training people, yeah.
You're training people how to use the metal machine. He said, well, they never used to have a cage around it. Now they do, thankfully.
At the very least, I mean, could you get me a trainer who's got 2 arms?
But that would have been, that would have been back in there, because he predated my mum, so he was probably working there like 20 years before her, in the 70s or something, or whatever. And I bet, and I don't know this, I bet you he got no compensation. The company just went, don't worry, Joe, we'll look after you, we'll keep your job open for you.
Yeah.
Really?
Unless you lose the other arm.
Exactly. Yeah, then we might have to reconsider that option.
We'll change your name.
That's right, yeah. This comes from Josh, who says, I love the contradiction of that last voice note. As 45 plus is the parents of these 18-year-olds.
Yeah, well, I think parents do.
They should have done better, those parents, says Josh.
I think there's loads of responsibility to go around. Society's changed to make people just think, copping out is the easy one. We've funded it, and parents do need to... Back in the day, here goes the rant, back in the day, if ever there was like a school meeting, it would be the parents and the teachers against the kids saying the kids should do better. These days, it's the child and the parents going in to tell the teacher off. Yeah. And that means when you get to the workplace, you don't respect authority, so you don't work very well, so you get fired.
We've got some favourite lag stories coming in as well. How did we get on to... because Peter Murrell, Nicola Sturgeon's husband, is currently on C Wing at a prison somewhere. And one assumes he's going to get a custodial sentence, because the idea that he's been remanded.
He'll work in the library, mainly in the ladder area.
We've had some high-profile ones about Jeffrey Archer, of course, he was in jail. My mate, Piers, he told this story on TalkSport. He's a journalist, and he told this story... and he turned it almost into an Edinburgh show. It's like it's a 1-hour anecdote. But when he was a student, when he was about 20, he went backpacking, and he ended up in Thailand. And somebody said, do you know you can take gold to Kathmandu from Thailand in a waistcoat? Okay, and this was a student thing, and they'll pay you like $100 to pay for your flight. It gets you to Kathmandu, so you can see Everest and stuff, and you get $100. And it's not like you're smuggling drugs or
it is
guns or something.
It's very similar,
but it's not got that kind of vibe to it. There's something. So he thought, I'll do that, and so anyway, long story short, sticks this waistcoat on under his jacket, him and I think 3 others. He said it weighed about 4 stone. He said it was ridiculous, and put it on. They get on the flight, everything's fine. They get to Kathmandu, they arrive at the airport, and suddenly they hear whatever the Kathmandu words are for get on the floor. On the floor they go, I said it was the strangest thing, because so he ended up appearing on Banged Up Abroad, you know, that programme on Channel 4. He ended up appearing on that. So they go into this office, there's a policeman there who explains to them, as best he can, that they've been smuggling gold. Someone just made a... They knew they were coming. You're going to have to go to court. So they put them in a van, they go to court, and the judge is the same bloke who was the policeman at the airport. It's the same fella who just got in a car ahead of them. And then they get to the prison. I think it's the same man who's running the prison.
In a different hat.
He was sentenced to 3 years in this jail. And he did, I think, I'm tempted to say 8 months or something. And the British embassy got them. I think there was him, a Canadian, a Frenchman. It was the usual kind of slightly midnight expressy.
Yeah.
And he says he kind of, it's the wrong thing to do, but because it didn't seem like you're taking, cocaine or something, which got, the real baddie of contraband, or something of that nature. He was kind of all right with it, and he was just a daft 20-year-old backpacker that thought I could make a few quid.
Instead of smuggling the drugs, you're smuggling the asset that is purchased with the drug money to move it around.
That's making a lot of assumptions, Steve. So Piers, my mate Piers, is my favourite lag in that respect. Yeah.
Because to me, and I've not met him, sounds like a fool. Like I probably could have gone up to him and said, "Have you tried tasting these filled condoms? Don't you?" Yeah. And he might have gone for that as well.
Have you ever been to a prison, by the way?
No, not in neither capacity.
I've been. I did a programme. We did a radio programme from Prison on the Isle of Sheppey.
You did a 5-stretch.
Prison. Did a 5-stretch. I went to Maidstone Prison because I thought journalistically I might be able to get to interview Ronnie Cray, because he was still in there. And the governor, I sort of faked my way in. I was working at the old BBC place that we both worked at. I faked my way in by saying, "Oh, we're thinking of doing a piece about prisons." And really, it was just a way of trying to get to Craig. Took me around the prison. I never forget. Never forget this governor said, "We're going to go to the Rule 43ers. I think they're called the Rule 43ers. This is the sex offenders and the really horrible people." And as we're walking towards it, I said to this governor, I said, and I was a bit nervy about going in this particular wing, and I said I would imagine, as we're walking towards it, like so many criminals, you'd never know when you meet these people. And he went, "Oh no, you would." He said, "You wait till you come in here." And it was really strange.
It was like the whole BBC from the 1970s.
Then we get to the lifer wing, where they get very little problems in jail with lifers because they're there for life. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. So Cray wasn't there. He was out on the sports field. Go back to the governor's office, and I just happened to very clumsily, because I was quite naive, said, "So, Ronnie Cray, do you think he would do an interview with me?" The governor clocked me instantly of what I was clearly there to try and do. He ripped me apart in what I look back is the most delicious rollicking. I mean, it was PhD level. He said, "If you think me as a governor are going to let one of my prisoners, I don't care how high profile they are, one of my prisoners talk to the likes of you, I would advise him every day of the week not to do that. Now get out." Wow. So I actually escaped from Maidstone Prison. I walked out, my legs were wobbling like jelly.
This guy's better than my agent.
It was horrific. Yeah. It was. I felt so stupid because I hadn't subtly done it. I should have waited for a day, got back in touch with him. Could I interview a selection of prisoners? Maybe a lifer, possibly a well-known one. Maybe that guy called Ronnie. I don't know. I've never forgotten that. I have a slight bilious feeling when I think about it.
Yeah. I'm glad you got out, because they can tell by looking. And maybe you didn't get put in the one of those wings.
Absolutely right. We're out of. Are we out of time? Are we going to do the voice note and then come back to Steve, or are we out of time? We're done, Steve.
Well, that's brief.
You could go and have a full English now, as we discussed yesterday on the show.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm up for that.
Ketchup or brown sauce?
Oh, ketchup.
No, I'm ketchup all the way. Apart from the bacon sandwich of brown sauce. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. Drop us a voice note there as well. Kids not working. What is behind that? And favourite lags as well. How we got onto that, I've even forgotten now. Let's get a voice note on that very point from Hydro.
Growing up in West London, on my beloved Highfields estate, big letters sprayed across the wall. Nelson Mandela, free Lester Pickett.
I love it. Free Leicester Piggott.
Yeah.
We are out of time. We're not out of time, are we yet?
Ken Dodd.
Oh, 27. We've got 27. Free Leicester Piggott.
Yeah, but if you're doing Leicester Piggott, Ken Dodd. Free Ken Dodd.
Ken Dodd did time, didn't he?
Yeah.
Tax evasion.
Tax, same as the... And do you know what? Leicester Piggott, jockey, would have needed the ladder to get into the library stuff. Do you know what? It all fits.
It all fits, all comes full circle. Thank God for the sturgeons. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reid, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
No.
Got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Good.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough is a quiet, leafy town in East Sussex. These people, you can see, have been pushed to their absolute limit. They're not...
The thing about our country is good manners, not very British.
What Labour advisors?
Someone else's money today, another taxpayer, or even worse, it's the money from our future selves. And
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk Breakfast. Yeah, good morning, Ian Collins. For the last day in for Jezza, he's back on Monday. So Andy Burnham, the man who wants to be our next Prime Minister, has hit back at Tony Blair and called for more state control. He wants to end what he calls 40 years of neoliberalism. If anyone knew what that really meant, we could decide whether he's right or wrong. I know where my money would instinctively be. Also this morning, would you pay to see a GP? Doctors are set to vote on the idea of charging for a kind of Netflix-style subscription service, much like dentists would do. Would you support such a move? And would it make the NHS more efficient and greater value for money? Details to come. That much-awaited Alan Milburn report finally came out yesterday in full. We can bring you some of the highlights, both of them. Essentially, young people don't want to work, but it's not actually their fault. Let me ask you this. If you are an employer and run a small business, what is your assessment of younger people in the workplace? Are they just full of anxiety and crippled with trouble, or simply unreliable, unrealistic and bone idle? And is it a British thing as well? Curious on that angle too. 0344 499 1000. Elsewhere, Nicola Sturgeon says she's enjoyed the worst week of her life after her husband was found guilty of a £500,000, or just shy of £500,000 worth of embezzlement. We've uncovered, by the way, if you didn't hear it in the first hour, we will play it again, the best clip ever. A clip that comes under the headline of words that come back to haunt you. And by the way, what was the worst week of your life? Or we'll go for the worst day. You know, when a set of events seem to conspire against you. It always starts off with something like, I don't know, spilling your cup of tea in the kitchen. And then you miss the train. And on it goes. It's a domino effect of doom. Have you been there? Or was it something even worse than that? Oh, and then you got fired at the end of the day. 0344 499 1000. And let them eat hake. Fish and chip bosses are trying to get Brits to try different types of fish in order to save struggling chip shops. How do you fancy a portion of pollock instead of your standard cod? And of course it is Fish and Chip Friday. We'll take your thoughts on suggestions and what you perhaps purchase down your local chippy. They have embroidered their menus quite a lot over the years, haven't they? To go outside. Like, you could never buy fried chicken before in a chippy. I can remember scampi arriving in the chip shop. I mean, that was really a moment. Wow. Thoughts on that? Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news. 0344 499 1000. We have got a correction to make as well, by the way. Not that I think the man's alive to challenge us, but Ken Dodd was found not guilty of tax evasion. Following, because we said he went to jail for tax evasion, following a highly publicised 1989 trial at Liverpool Crown Court, that's his neck of the woods, a jury acquitted him of all charges relating to defrauding the Inland Revenue, although he did pay a substantial sum in back taxes and penalties. So Doddy never did go to jail. Lester Piggott went to jail. Jeffrey Archer went to jail. I'm talking about, well-known people. Jonathan Aitken went to jail. Who's the Labour guy? Expenses. He was married to Carol Barnes, the newsreader. His name escapes me. He went to jail. Ken Dodd did not go to jail. Let's speak to Lord John Regwood, former Conservative Cabinet Minister, of course. John, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
There seemed to be a bit of a moment when some MPs did, of course, find themselves on the inside of a prison cell. Can you remember who I'm trying to think of? The Labour... Dennis McShane, that was it. Dennis McShane went to jail, didn't he? Of course.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We remember that. Let's not talk about prison. Let's talk about more urgent matters. And we've now got, as we know, a man waiting to be Prime Minister. His name is Andy Burnham. He also wants to serve the people of Makerfield, but mostly he wants to be the Prime Minister. And he's hit back, really, at Tony Blair this week. He's essentially called for more of a statist approach. He's suggesting that he wants an end of 40 years' worth of neoliberalism. You've been in the House, both of them, for a long time, John. You'd have seen Burnham in action back in the day, etc. What do you make of this man's journey, and what do you sense he's likely to do if he gets the keys to number 10?
Well, he's clearly on a journey leftwards. He didn't have those same views when he was in Blair's government. I don't remember him hitting out then about how Blair was wrong. And I think Blair is being completely consistent today with what he was doing in the early part of his government. Yeah. Unfortunately, his government was derailed by bad economics under Gordon Brown in the second half, when they allowed too much cash and credit and then decided to bankrupt the banks, having allowed them to overexpand. But I think what's happening in Labour now is they're very unhappy with their current state in the polls. And then instead of taking good advice from Blair to say, you need to be more conservative, and I think Blair's got quite a few of his ideas from the Conservative Alternative Agenda for how to get the economy growing and people back into work. And they're saying, no, we don't want any more of that. We want to lurch leftwards. Well, if you have much more state control, are you going to have more HS2s, railways that don't go anywhere, are 10 years late and cost the taxpayer a fortune? And what does that do? Drives up borrowing, drives up interest rate charges, makes it more difficult for small businesses and makes it more difficult for mortgage holders. They want the opposite of that. They want a more efficient, leaner public sector, and they want to get out of the way of the private sector much more, get those taxes down again. Why are so many young people unable to get a job? It's because they can't be afforded anymore with national insurance as high as it is and business rates as high as they are.
It's interesting, and whether he does have this lurch to the left in reality, of course, is another theory, that he's saying a lot of this stuff to get back in the saddle in the top job, and if he gets it, actually he'll revert to perhaps how he previously was, because he was a Blairite, and then he was a sort of a Corbynite, and then he became the mayor in Greater Manchester, and now we're seeing a sort of more of a... It's almost as if he's sort of put his finger in the air and sensed that the wind is blowing in this direction. I'll go left, but when I get the job, I'll revert to perhaps a different form of governance.
Well, of course,
is that a thought that's palpable?
Well, I mean, yes, he obviously moves all over the place, but I mean, Burnham is currently a candidate in a by-election, and there are quite a lot of other candidates in that by-election. Yeah. You will obviously want to be fair to the range of candidates available. It's a big task for him to both win the by-election and then take over the leadership. I think, again, Blair is right. Blair is saying to Starmer and Streeting and to Burnham and to Miliband and all the others, the jostling for the top job, don't worry about who's going to do it. Worry about what you're going to do, because Blair has made a very strong case, as has the leader of the opposition, saying that most of the economic things they've done so far have made the position worse, not better, haven't tackled the underlying problems and have created new underlying problems. And the Labour need to think through what they're going to use all this power for that the public gave them, before they then decide who is the best man or woman to take that task on. And they're getting it the wrong way round. Yeah. Changing people who change their views more often than I have hot dinners is not going to be the answer.
Indeed. A lot of this comes off the back of this essay that Tony Blair published, 5,000, I think just over 5,000 words, about what has gone terribly wrong with our direction. He talks about a lack of a sort of philosophical underpinning, a lack of direction, a lack of policy as distinct from politics. And Mr. Starmer, not to be outdone, fired back with a slightly shorter essay. I think it's about 3,000 words. Let's have a listen to what the Prime Minister said in response to Tony Blair.
You won't be surprised to know that I don't agree with much of what Tony says about what the government is doing. We can all argue about individual policies, but the real question is, what's the change, what's the difference that is happening in a country that we inherited 2 years ago in a very poor place? We put the policy in place to stabilise the economy and make sure that it grew so wealth was created in every part of the country. Because of our policy choices, that is happening. And you see that in the figures that were out this year, in recent months in particular.
Now, with respect, John Redwood, to the Prime Minister, that doesn't make much sense to me, because demonstrably the evidence says the very opposite to what the Prime Minister has just told us.
Well, that's right. And they believe in the OBR, the Labour government, and their forecast for when the Conservatives left office. The OBR said that this year, on Conservative policies, we'd have inflation under 2% and we'd have growth at 2%. And they said world growth would be 3.1. Now we've got Labour and all the changes they've made. They said inflation is going to be higher. They say unemployment is going to be higher. Growth is only going to be 1%. But they still think world growth will be 3.1. So clearly the OBR, their chosen forecaster, is saying, you've made everything worse. And that is what Blair is saying. That's why I find myself in a strange position of agreeing with a lot of what Tony Blair has written in his very long essay and disagreeing with the Starmer essay. Starmer won't accept that his national insurance rises, his business tax rises have damaged business. He won't accept that his energy policy is completely potty, stopping us getting our own energy out of the ground, with all the tax revenue you get from that and all the better paid jobs you get from that. This is an anti-growth Prime Minister who's drifted too far left already and now has a left-wing revolt against the fact that he isn't left-wing enough. You know, it's just crazy. Pity the poor country.
Indeed.
And pity the young people who can't get jobs as a result. Unemployment is massively up under this government already.
It's interesting, isn't it, the cross-party, lots of Conservatives are not so much praising Tony Blair, but just rather concurring with the overarching word. You were you worked in the policy unit at Number 10 under Thatcher. You were the director of that unit, so you know how policy needs to be. I mean, you treat this like a Ming vase policy, don't you? You know, it has to be crafted correctly. It has to have a meaning. It has to have a substance, and it has to be sellable to the electorate and get people on board. And Thatcher's administration was full of those moments where you knew the direction, even if you fundamentally disagreed with Thatcher. You could have been, Dennis Skinner would sit here and say, yeah, she actually had a direction, she had a point, she had a purpose, she knew where she was going, there was a roadmap, if you want to look at it that way. That's the kind of overarching point that clearly Blair was making. It existed under Thatcher for a bit, it existed under Blair. What's happened here? Where has it gone wrong? I mean, I asked myself, why does Keir Starmer even want to be the Prime Minister? I honestly, John, do not have a clue what he stands for.
Well, that's a great question, because you'd hope that somebody wanted to be the Prime Minister because they knew how to make the country better and they were going to implement their way of doing it. We seem to have a man who just wants to be Prime Minister because he likes being called Prime Minister, and then he wants to spend all his time out of the country where he's treated better, away from the criticisms of all the mistakes he's making. You're absolutely right. I mean, good policy work needs a lot of detail, a lot of analysis. Sometimes you discover that your prejudices are wrong and you've got to change your prejudice. But there needs to be some principle behind it. And that was the important point about Thatcher, that she had a set of principles which we worked with and to. And so I remember, the civil service weren't always happy with what we're doing. Public weren't always happy with some of the things we had to do to make things come right. But the civil service one day did say something nice to me. And they said, well, at least with you lot, we know where we stand.
Yes.
You give us a clear steer of what we've got to do. And we can now predict what you're going to do next because you've got a set of principles. There's nothing like that for Starmer.
Yeah, indeed. And they often talk about Starmer didn't like the details, and Mrs. Thatcher was very much the antithesis of all of that. I would imagine.
Oh yeah, I had to be very well briefed to go. I was going to say,
Thatcher. I would imagine when you
had lots of good arguments. Stand my ground.
I was going to say, I can imagine when you walked into a room with Margaret Thatcher and explained, what you'd put together and what you were proposing and what might be good. I can imagine colourful moments that would have been had in
strong arguments. And what was so great about Margaret was I had one-to-one arguments with her. She didn't take any of it personally. And if she suddenly decided you were right, she would change her view. And I never told people when that happened because it was very important. It was always the Prime Minister's view.
Yeah. Fair point. Let's just finally look at this Alan Milburn story. Alan Milburn, who seems to have been writing this report on young people forever, frankly. Well, it came to fruition this week. We sort of trickled out the headlines over the last few days. Yesterday, he gave a speech explaining it. It all centres around young people who are not in education, not in work, not in training. Let's have a listen to the former Labour Health Secretary, Alan Milburn, on that point.
There is no singular explanation for the NEET problem worsening. But there is one standout change. Over the past decade, the proportion who say they're NEET due to a work-limiting health condition has increased by 70%. The proportion of NEETs citing mental health or conditions like ADHD and autism as their primary condition has more than doubled.
So there's no specific. I mean, it's one of those reports, John, that's sort of come out and, well, yeah, it's a problem, but it's not their fault and it's doubled. We don't want to really blame anyone. I don't know what we fully extrapolate from it. It's early days, maybe. But what is your overarching assessment that we've got 70% of young people who are not in work due to health conditions? We've got a projection of 1 in 6 having no work, training or education in the next 5 years. I mean, it's a grim picture and doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Well, the Labour government's making it considerably worse. There's been an explosion in the number of people with mild mental health conditions that have been given a sick note for life, which I and the Conservative leadership have been highlighting and complaining about for some time. And what is so disappointing is that Milburn takes quite a long time to tell us things we already knew. And then the report says, by the way, I don't have any answers yet. I'm going to go away and think about some answers. Well, they're 2 years into their government. They're making a difficult problem a lot worse. There's a big increase in unemployment amongst young people for a whole variety of reasons that they should know about. And the opposition has been handing them on a plate a solution to this problem of mild mental health conditions, saying you've got to have one-to-one interviews in person. You don't do it all on a computer. And the person has to say gently to the young person, no, we're not going to give you a sick note for life. This isn't a reason not to look for a job. Indeed, we're going to help you look for a job more intensively, because a job is often the best kind of therapy you can have for those mild mental health conditions. And then get away from this explosion. At the same time, you've got to have the Blair Conservative agenda on lower business taxes and backing business more, because we're in a condition where lots of small businesses and lots of businesses on the high street that used to create entry-level jobs can't afford to.
And just finally, John, I need to play you this clip because it's just too wonderful not to. Nicola Sturgeon says she's had the worst week of her life. This is after her husband was found guilty of embezzlement, £400,000 worth of misuse, and essentially theft of party donations. She says it's been the worst week of her life. There's always a clip, isn't there? That phrase, there's always a clip of something. This is from 2022, and it's just worth playing for the giggle factor, if nothing else. This was Nicola Sturgeon talking to Newsround, that bastion of hard news, back in 2022, the kids' news programme on the BBC. Let's have a listen to what she said and what was asked by one kid in the audience.
Well, on that note, Kevin, do you want to ask your question to the First Minister? Go for it.
How has the cost of living crisis affected your household?
But, Kevin, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that somebody like me in the job I do, which is, you know, paid well by comparison to lots of people across the country, I'm experiencing the cost of living crisis in the same way that many other people are, because I think if I was to pretend that that was the case, you would look at me and think, are you sure? Nevertheless, and the other admission I have to make here straight up is that my husband does most of the shopping in my household, so, but, you know, he notices, like everybody else does, the way things are going up in price in the supermarkets.
So there we are, John. We need... Her husband does all the shopping in their house, including a £125,000 mobile home, by all accounts.
Yeah, it is curious how lacking in curiosity she was with all these goodies coming into the house and saying she didn't know they were there, and then we see pictures of her posing for pictures in her kitchen with her husband. So surely she would have noticed some of these great items. But I mean, the bigger question that she's got to answer as the leader of the party who had to sign off the accounts every year is why didn't she ask about where all the £400,000 was going to that people had given for campaigning? Because they clearly weren't buying leaflets with it, and they weren't buying in services for political purposes, because it was being spent on camper vans. Well, I mean, she should have noticed that, perhaps.
You might have thought so, and certainly 2,000 quid's worth of salt and pepper pots in the kitchen might have been a bit of a clue that opulence was clearly her husband's middle name. Listen, John Redwood, thank you. Always good to have you on. Lord John Redwood, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. Loads of comments coming in from you. By the way, Ken Dodd, I mentioned Ken Dodd, of course, that he did not actually go to jail. Peter says... Peter of Southend-on-Sea, Ken Dodd did time, did he? No, did he? Yes. Couple of... but it turns out he didn't do time. And this one came in from Mark, who says, morning Ian, talking about Ken Dodd, there's a rumour, not sure if it's true, that when pressed by HMRC on his suspect tax affairs, he said, they call it the Inland Revenue, but I live by the sea. Boom, boom. Love that. So he didn't go to jail. He was found not guilty. He had to pay some back payment. Lester Piggott, however, former jockey, did go to jail. I can't remember how long he did, but he went to jail. Mark says, my parents purchased a chippy in 1976 and fried chicken breast was on the menu. I was making the point that it was maybe came a bit later, but now I think about when I worked in the chippy when I was at school, I think there was chicken breast there. That was in the 80s. It was the most expensive item on the menu, says Mark. Also, battered burgers and pineapple rings, among other delicacies. Yeah, so the chip is always diversified into other areas. And now chip shops are calling for it to be maybe diverse a little more into other forms of fish, not just cod, maybe a bit of pollock in there. Would you be all right with that? To be honest, whitefish to me all taste the same when you lob batter on top. So I'm the last person to ask. We talked about Makerfield and the by-election there with John Regwood. These are the candidates for the Makerfield by-election. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats. Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer, Independent. Ed Gemmell, Climate Party. Paul Gould, Independent. Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. They are all the candidates standing in the Makerfield by-election. We're going to pause momentarily. Before we do, let's get a voice note. We're talking about work ethic of young people. What is it about, this Milburn report and all that goes with it? If you're an employer, if you manage a place, even if it's not your own business as such, but you're responsible for, a new kid coming in, work experience, training, apprenticeship. What are you seeing on the ground? What is actually happening out there? Lots of cliches, all bone idle. Clearly not all young kids are bone idle, but there is a work ethic that has gone slightly skew-if over the years. Let's get a voice note on that from Phil. Morning, Phil.
Hi, Ian. Phil in Nottingham here, matey. You can pinpoint the moments at which the work ethic of the youth, etc., got destroyed, and it was school sports day, where everybody got a participation medal. You got congratulated just for having a go. No winners, no losers, and that's the problem, matey. You come last and you still get a medal. No, that is not the way life works.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 28 minutes after 7. It's Ian Collins in for Jezza. For the last day, he's back on Monday. We're talking kids and work ethic. What's gone wrong? Alan Milburn thinks he knows, but it's not the fault of the kids, he says. Let's get a voice note from Darren. Morning, Darren.
Good morning, Ian. Darren from sunny Bradford. Re your kids wanting to work. I have a 32-year-old that got made redundant, unfortunately, last year. He has applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs, most of which don't even bother replying and saying no. He's had a few interviews which look promising, and then he doesn't get the job. So not all kids don't want to work. Granted, there probably are quite a few. Have a great show, mate.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Darren. Yeah, I think you're bang on. There are kids that do want to work. Natasha says kids don't have a work ethic. They are not taught this. They're taught about feelings. When you're at school, we were taught CV, interviews, bills. Now kids take mental health days off. Of that, they don't feel they can, because of that, they don't feel they can work, or they are overstimulated. If we went to work and said, I don't feel like working, and were anxious, we would be told, I don't care about your feelings. You're here to work, not feel. Where now the boss is asking if they're okay. My daughter is sitting at GCSE and we've told her to get a part-time job. She's been applying and I've had to help her as she doesn't even know how to apply for a job. And Natasha is right, because at that stage you'd think the school would... I know some things are parents' responsibilities, which is why Natasha is stepping in. But you'd think by GCSE level somebody would have gone through basic CV writing or something of that nature, just to try and get a part-time job. It's a great thing to do as well. I mean, it really is. Just applying for it and hoping and wondering, I didn't get that one, I got an interview, but I didn't even hear back. And then, and it's not great when companies don't get back to young people. And it's a pretty grim reality, and that's not fair. But it does sort of go with the territory. But getting out there and giving it a go. The feelings thing is extraordinary. When I worked at the BBC, I mean, I remember having editorial meetings. We'd just done a breakfast show. You're meant to be sitting around pulling apart whether the show was good or bad, what worked, what didn't work. The first question that was often asked is, how is everybody feeling? Everybody feeling okay? There's a bloke sitting there going, are you feeling all right? Everything all right? Are you okay? Anything you need? And he'd obviously been on a training course to do that. And then when we did dissect the programme, there was never anything critical about it. Now, you come into the commercial world, and if you've done a bad show, somebody will tell you it's a bad show and don't do it again. Why did you have that guest on? Don't ever use that guest again. They were awful. Don't ever do that again. They would never say that at the BBC. It was all about the feelings. Yeah, and why can't people just go, yeah, I'm fine. Actually, fine. I'm great, actually. I've never felt best, even if they're not. Yeah, it's the British thing, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on kids in the workplace and the like. Let's go to this story as well. GPs are to vote on charging patients for a Netflix-style subscription service. As £150,000 a year family doctors push for greater freedom to provide private services. There's a lot to tuck into here. Let's speak to a medic who regularly helps us out on these kind of stories. Dr. Dean Eggett, GP, CEO of Doncaster Local Medical Committee. Always good to have you on with us, Dean. Listen, on work ethic, by the way, doctors work their socks off. Good doctors are absolutely, worth every penny. We all get that. And, eventually doctors can travel through the ranks and do all sorts of things and find themselves earning a really good salary. And that's fantastic. But charging is always, it pops up once in a while, doesn't it? Should we do, in Ireland, was it €50 for to go to see your GP? Australia do something similar. I think several other countries around the world do something similar, not with any great controversy. There are still individuals that are exempt, like there are with dentists and eye tests and things like that. What's not to like, Dean? Morning.
Good morning, Ian. Thanks for having me back. So this one is, I think, a slightly different topic to when we're usually talking about charging patients. So it's important to understand the context. I don't think anybody is happy at the moment with the state of the NHS and with general practice. Patients complain to us pretty much all day, every day about the level of service, and we apologise all day, every day. And just to remind you, we GPs are patients too, so we understand what the service is, even from a patient perspective. Now, that can't continue. So what we're seeing now, I think, is GPs saying, well, the NHS isn't really working anymore from a general practice perspective. What should an alternative look like? So at the moment, we have GPs who are contracted to the NHS. So there could be a possibility where GPs say, well, we'll have part of an NHS contract, and we could also have like a private substream where it's a subscription. Or actually, should we start preparing for general practice outside of the NHS because it's broken and it doesn't work? Now, this isn't really about the money. It's not about me having a higher take-home pay. It's about us having flexibility to say, can we actually safely take care of patients in the current system? And I think many people would probably agree with me in saying that the current system is not really doing justice for patients in the UK at the moment.
Most people, I think, would obviously concur with that. I mean, it's controversial for lots of reasons. Of course, the love affair we have with the NHS precludes us from looking outside the basic sort of cradle-to-grave free treatment thing. Now, the reality is, we want to pick it apart. It's not free treatment. It costs an absolute fortune, and we do pay for it. We just pay for it in a different kind of way through sort of general taxation, national insurance contributions, and the like. It all goes into the big pot. So it's not free. Why does it work, the basic idea of paying for a GP appointment? Why does it work so well in other countries, and why does it lack the controversy in other countries that we have here? Is it just about our almost messianic view of our health service?
Well, the NHS, when it was invented, was world-changing. There are systems across the world that have tried to emulate the NHS because it was so brilliant at the time. But it was at the time for the time, and it's not necessarily for now. So I believe in the NHS. I believe that an NHS should continue, but it doesn't necessarily have to look as it looks now. So again, coming back to the subscription-style service, this already exists. Many of my patients now have a dual GP service. They're registered with me for NHS care, and they pay a subscription to a private service to go and do all sorts of other bits and bobs. And they come to me and say, well, can you do this for me, please? Don't worry, I'll pay you. And I'll say, well, actually, I can't. I'm not allowed. So first of all, what we'd be doing is giving to patients what they're already asking for. But this is the really important point. If we think that the NHS is failing to such a point that general practice may even collapse in the future and it's not able to care for patients, we do need to think of what a plan B looks like just for patient safety. If there is no plan B and the NHS general practice goes, then patients are stuck. So we should start planning.
Yeah. Why does it works all right with dentists, doesn't it? I mean, there are NHS dentists, and even there, it's not. I say it works all right. A dentist would probably say no, it doesn't. And I know there are issues hugely around clinicians working in dental practices, but the exemption point that I made, Dean, that, you know, if you are unemployed or you're elderly, pregnant, all of those usual exemptions would and could apply to something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's pretend for a brief moment we did have some form of hybrid system where we were allowed, or we did decide to set up some sort of subscription-based service. Then of course there needs to be a plan for those patients who cannot afford a subscription-based service, because GPs are not evil people. We need to figure out how to deliver a service for everybody. And that's really what this vote is about. It's not about, shall we just charge everybody? It's about, what would a service look like if we were to have a different model to what we have now, because the current model doesn't work. So please, if you're from a low-income family and you struggle with your health, don't worry that suddenly you're going to have to start paying us Netflix-style charges in a week or two. That's not going to happen. You are going to be looked after. We will take care of you.
What's the reality of this vote then, and who gets to vote? I mean, who's putting this together?
So this is a union vote. This is a British Medical Association vote, but it's not their brainchild. This actually comes from grassroots GPs. So grassroots GPs have said, enough is enough. We need to do something. And they gave the BMA a mandate to say, can you ask the grassroots actually if this is what they want, please? So the BMA will essentially be organising a vote of grassroots GPs to say, do you give us a mandate to start planning this for you? Now, if they do have a mandate, they then need to go to government and say, OK, what does this look like? The obvious response from government is, well, we're not going to do that. So we talked about the current status quo, a hybrid system or an exit, and the hybrid would need government agreement. Now, if the government don't agree, essentially what we then have is, do we stay or do we go?
A word while you're with us, Dean. Front page of the Daily Mail. Always disturbing to read something like this. Decision that will condemn thousands to death. Fury as health advisors reject calls for mass prostate cancer screening programme. There it is there. It can be one of the biggest killers of men, but remarkably treatable if caught at the right time. And of course, screening is crucial to that. We've been back and forth with this prostate argument, no pun intended, for a long time now, Dean. Are they ever going to get this right? And what's the resistance here?
So the main problem with prostate cancer screening is, for screening, you need to have a disease that's easily easily identifiable through tests that are quite easy to do, not expensive, not going to harm the patient. You need to have a reliable result that you can say, yes, this is or this isn't the disease. And then you need to have a treatment that is acceptable and works. And actually, prostate cancer falls down on almost all three of those. So the diagnosis of prostate cancer is extraordinarily hard. We often get many results that are not necessarily reflective of reality. The tests can sometimes be particularly unpleasant and cause damage in themselves when you're moving on from the blood test because the blood test isn't brilliant. And the treatment itself, actually, if you get the diagnosis wrong or we're not quite sure of the threshold of what we call cancer actually in prostate cancer, the treatment can be life-changing. So you can end up, for example, incontinent, struggling with erectile dysfunction and have life-changing problems from the treatment. So there's a big question mark over actually, is the treatment acceptable and does it solve the problem? So because of those controversies around diagnosis, acceptability, treatment, there's a question mark then of actually should this fall into screening? And at the moment, the expert advice is it probably shouldn't fit into screening because our tests and treatments are just not good enough.
Yeah, but I mean, a simple blood test can give you a guide. I mean, how hard could that be?
It gives us a clue, absolutely. But if I get a blood test back that says, Dean, you might have prostate cancer, I then have to have these tests that might cause me problems. And that's the issue here. So I'm scared, I'm nervous, I think I've got prostate cancer, I'm going to have this test caused me an issue, and then I never had the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
What we've actually done is we've caused harm when the patient was fine.
So there's sort of a delicate balance here, but we're still losing too many people to prostate cancer, and numbers are unacceptable. You know, when there is notionally a solution out there, we're talking here about the pragmatics of it, aren't we, rather than the ability to carry out the test. We can do the test and we can do the treatment, but it's the potential waste of time in treating people who haven't actually got prostate cancer that's an issue.
And the harm. I mean, I don't mind wasting all sorts of time. I'm very happy to give patients all the time that they need, and I wouldn't class that as a waste. But what I don't want to do is harm a patient at the same time. So if we're going to spend time, effort, and money on this, what we need the time, effort, and money on is a better diagnosis, a better way of diagnosing the condition, and a better way of treating it so that we don't harm people in the process. When that harm comes down, we can then say, you know what, this is acceptable now. So perhaps we should put our time, effort, and money into diagnosis and treatment. Once we get that right, let's start screening en masse.
Dean, great to have you on. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Dr. Dean Eggert, GP, CEO of Doncaster Local Medical Committee. And I know if we open up lines on prostate cancer issues, trying to get a test when, I mean, it should be rather simple. It's all very well when Dean says, well, you know, it turns out a lot of people haven't actually got it and you've gone through what could be invasive testing and there's nothing there. Doesn't always tell you 100%. However, if it turned out you did have prostate cancer and it could have been treated much sooner, but you couldn't get the test. I mean, you know, only a bloke can answer this, obviously. Well, not only a bloke, but you take the point. 0344 499 1000. Thoughts on that? You can message 87222. It's 20 to 8. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk coming up on 7:45. This from Joanna says, my friend's granddaughter just got a job at 15 years old. She just happened to see a notice in a window, applied for it. She's chuffed at the maximum £8 an hour. If you saw all the legal restrictions involved, you can't blame employers not wanting to employ young people. I mean, it's a bit like, the bureaucracy. I could talk forever on bureaucracy of, even buying or selling a house, the form filling, the endless questions. I've got friends who've been through all of this as well. Just when you used to renting a house as well, you got the renters' rights bill half an hour ago. You saw a fella in the pub and went, Frank, you're looking for my mate's got a house to rent or a room to rent. No problem at all. 150 sobs, away you go. Jobs are good. And it was done. That was the end of it. Now you've got to go through portals with the local authority. You've got to make sure this box is ticked and goodness knows what. And by the way, nobody is defending a bad landlord, but you get into this territory and now you've got, employers that are happy to take on when it used to be knock on the door. When I got the job in the chip shop when I was about 14 and the fella said to me, can you pick that up? And he pointed to a big bag of potato, one of those big sacks of potatoes, and they are quite heavy. And I picked it up and he went, do you want a job? It's £1 an hour, mate. And I went, yeah, all right. And it was brilliant. I was liberated. I had money coming in. I was I'd walk away after the weekend with £30 or whatever it was. It was incredible, that sense of, wow. And nobody thought, well, in order to facilitate this transaction, firstly, let's get the government paperwork out. 14, firstly, I should be allowed to do it if I want to, and my parents are all right with it. That works out brilliantly. Today, that would be a whole different bureaucratic minefield of doom and nonsense. And it's all of that, the bureaucracy, the risk. You've got to pay this amount. You couldn't negotiate your own. There's got to be a set. That's all gone. And I understand the kind of sort of the notionally the idea of the minimum wage. But I think at that age, if you're all right and someone goes, it's 3 hours Saturday morning, mate, it's a tenner. All right, take it or leave it. You go, do you know what? Yeah, I'll do that. It's a tenner. I'll have some of that, £15, whatever it happens to be. But the endless form filling and going through all of the crazy officious lines that you can be taken through just for the audacity of having a flipping job. Brian in Sheffield says, morning Ian, how about this for a prison observation? Prison uniform was traditionally covered in arrows and Ronnie Barker's character is called Fletcher. A Fletcher is an old-fashioned name for an arrow maker. Also his cellmate is called Leonard Arthur Godber. The initials spell lag. Blows my mind every time. I didn't even think about, although did Ronnie Barker's prison uniform didn't have arrows on it though, did it? But he was called Fletcher, you're right. But Godber, who was Richard Beckinsale, wasn't it? I didn't know that. Leonard Arthur Godber. Lag. Love a little factoid like that. Thank you, Brian, for that. Linda says, school leavers should only be allowed benefits for 3 months. Then it should be stopped. Parents will make their kids find work when they have to fund them. I don't know how it works. I've got a feeling when you leave school, you can't just claim. But if you then move into a health situation, then it's different. Have I got that right? Somebody will put me right if I'm wrong, Linda. But if you move into a health-based benefit, that's very different from getting what would have just been, you're on the dole. Here's £50 a week or whatever. I think that's gone. I don't think an 18-year-old living at home can get that. But if you say I have significant health issues, anxiety, if that falls under the nature of significant, I think that puts you in a slightly different place. Chris from Wales says, I think a good solution to all these youngsters in work is to announce you have to be 25 years old to claim any benefits. That would probably make the difference. Roger in Hounslow, another character who I met in real life and was exactly the same as he appears on the telly is Jeremy Clarkson. Yes. Yeah, there's another face that is kind of, it's just so etched in Jeremy Clarkson. If you saw him, you would just go, yeah, that's a bloke wearing a Clarkson mask. It's actually his. It's kind of not. It's not about the fame. It's about certain people who are so recognisable that when you meet them, it just seems a bit odd that they are precisely that person you've seen on the telly for the last 30 years. As only a few characters tick that box. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word with Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Isabel, morning to you.
Good morning. I loved listening to Dr. Dean Eggett. He's such a great doctor. Yeah. I know him a little bit. Once spent a day shadowing him as a GP up in, I think it's near Doncaster that he's based. And I thought it was so interesting to hear his take on the prostate cancer screening, because it's so easy for people just to sit and sort of shout and say, well, you know, we must have this screening and it's a bad thing that there isn't. And he just put a very different complexion on it.
Completely, yeah.
I mean, I've got a real interest in this because my late father died, I would say probably with prostate cancer rather than of it. And he was a twin, and his twin had died of prostate cancer after a much more brutal illness. And I think the reason my dad had such a better time of it was because he did get a very early diagnosis. And actually, my dad had prostate cancer for 13 years. And not once in that whole time was he ever hospitalized overnight. Wow. He was never admitted. Yeah. And it did slowly kind of debilitate him towards the end of his life. But my point is that when prostate cancer is caught early, as it was in his case, it can be so well managed. He was on drugs for years, you know, right through that 13-year period, but it kept it at bay. And this is what happens to a lot of, in quotes, luckier men with prostate cancer. Sure. They'll ultimately die of other things. Whereas his twin brother, whose prostate cancer was not caught early, actually had a pretty awful time of it and a very difficult last few years of his life. So it is vital to get that testing. But it was interesting to hear Dean's take on, you know, how useful is the kind of just sort of routine screening rather than, you know, more targeted testing, I suppose.
Indeed. Well, I was talking to a doctor literally about this. You know, these kind of all-over health scans you can have. And it sounds like, wait, who doesn't want an all-over health scan to give you a clean bill of health? And he was pointing out, similarly to Dean's point, the problem is scanning is so good these days that any little blemish or little mark can be picked up as potentially suspicious when it's actually not. So you go for a scan, you pay 300 quid, you scan your body. Nope, we can't find any tumours, but we have found a little mark there. So you're going to have a biopsy on your lung. And then you discover actually there's nothing wrong with your lung at all. But by that stage, you've been through a fairly invasive and potentially dangerous procedure to establish that there was nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, and they're big on that here. Where I am in Dubai, they're brilliant at kind of this type of preventative health screening. In fact, this morning I've only just been for something like 64 blood tests. You give a bit of blood and they will test 64 different things. And, you know, it's something you slightly put off because just for the reason that you said, if you're going to test 64 different measures, there's probably going to be some in there that I'm not going to like the look of. And then that's an anxious time and so on and so forth. So I think it's a difficult balance. But, you know, the NHS can't and won't do that kind of thing. And I paid for this morning, a couple of £100. And the ultimate example of this in the UK was a period in which there were various companies pushing sort of preventative health MRI scans. And I think that's sort of almost, you can probably still get it, but it's not nearly as heavily marketed for the very reason that you said, that, you know, having an MRI scan, it's a big deal and it may well show up something that looks worrying and actually is nothing to worry about. But we don't do well enough on preventative health generally in the UK. So it's just trying to get that balance, and a cash-strapped NHS basically can't do this stuff.
Indeed. Let's move on to something else. It's an exclusive that I know is going to be airing this afternoon on Talk with Kevin on Drive. It's a migrant special. Tell us more, Isabel.
So I'm really excited about this and hope everyone can tune into it. I, along with the undercover migrant Christian Drogan, have been doing a lot of work in Calais and Dunkirk this week to document the huge summer surge that we've just seen in channel crossings. And both Christian and a photographer called Adrian, who we know as the Nowhere photographer, have been working really hard to bring some extraordinary footage and audio to talk about what's been going on. And it really is, there's so much to take from this. This photographer, unlike many photographers, and certainly unlike the French police, who just literally won't get their feet wet, waded into the water right up to his shoulders. He had his camera hoisted high to get the most powerful close-up footage of boat departures and of the desperation and fear of illegal immigrants as they tried to board a very, very overcrowded boat. And guess what? All the while there are women and children in the water, and indeed a man who was on the edge of severe hypothermia in the water, the gendarme are pictured just in a row on the sand by the water. They literally will not get their feet wet.
It's rather extraordinary, isn't it, that we've sort of arrived in this place. It's what we suspected and what we've sort of seen, but this is quite clear evidence that somebody isn't playing ball on this one.
I know people might feel that we all know the French police don't do enough, but I think that we've got to keep exposing it for what it is.
Yeah.
Because this government keeps giving them money, and there's nothing like that powerful footage, those images where you see literally a line of police, the gendarmes are just standing on the beach. They've got their pathetic little riot shields, which we, the British taxpayer, have funded, and they're just doing absolutely nothing. They had every opportunity to stop those migrants getting into the water, getting into life or death difficulty, and they just stand there. All they're good for is, keeping an eye on it, I suppose. To what end? I have no idea. And make no mistake, migrants are dying in the channel.
Yeah.
And so when people say, oh, we can't stop the boats because people will drown, well, people are already drowning. People are already living wretched existences in northern France. And northern France is a terrifying, dangerous, lawless, semi-war zone run by the gangs, that part of northern France. So the idea that it's somehow inhumane to try to stop the boats is only one that can be voiced by people who have no experience of what is really happening in those migrant camps and in the channel. And we'll bring you that this afternoon, thanks to the Nowhere photographer and Christian Drogan of Watchmen.
Good work. Looking forward to it. Isabel, thank you. Have a great day. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Watch that this afternoon. Kevin O'Sullivan is on Drive from 4 o'clock, and you hear the full story. And if you're watching in pictures as well on the YouTube channel, you can see the visuals of that as well. Lots more to get through, loads more to talk about. 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news now. The time on Talk is 8 o'clock.
breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in, as to all the people...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome back. It's the home of common sense. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for today only. He's back on Monday. What have we got this morning? Quite a lot. Andy Burnham, the man who wants to be our next Prime Minister, has hit back at Tony Blair and called for more state control. This is not a phrase I think most of us were expecting at this point in the 21st century. He wants to end what he calls 40 years of neoliberalism, despite the fact that half an hour ago he was a fully signed-up member of that ideology. If anyone knew what that even meant, we could decide whether he's right or wrong. We'll talk to Anne Widdecombe about this and more in a few moments' time. Also, as you've been hearing, would you pay to see a GP? Doctors are set to vote on the idea of charging like a Netflix-style subscription service, much like dentists would do. Would you support such a move? Would it make the NHS more efficient and greater value for money? We'll have more on that story and your thoughts and experiences. The much-awaited Alan Milburn report has come out in full. It finally appeared yesterday. We can bring you some of those highlights, both of them. Essentially, young people don't want to work, but it's not their fault. Let me ask you this. If you're an employer or a manager of an establishment or a business, what is your assessment of young people in the workplace? Are they just full of anxiety and crippled with troubling woe? Or simply unreliable, unrealistic and bone idle? What is your assessment of what has gone so horribly wrong when you have a million young people and growing, not in work, not in education, not in training? Nicola Sturgeon says she's endured the worst week of her life after her husband this week was found guilty of that just shy of £500,000 worth of embezzlement. He's clearly going to jail. We've uncovered the best clip ever. If you didn't hear it in the last hour, we'll play you that in a bit. It comes under the headline of words that will come back to haunt you. It's just a little beauty. Courtesy of Newsround, of all places to find a clip, Newsround from 4 years ago. And by the way, what was the worst week of your life? Or was it the worst day of your life? We'll take some anecdotal thoughts on that as well. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk. We're on 0344 499 1000. That is where you can drop us a voice note as well. You can message 87222. Rebecca in Wiltshire says, can you imagine if the debate about GPs charging patients, if there was a Tory government, there would be shouts from the left saying privatisation of the NHS. Absolutely right. It's always said that, isn't it? Even Reform have now got that. I mean, the Conservatives would probably go, well, thank God it's not us anymore. So, because Nigel Farage once suggested in a clip from, I think, about a quarter of a century ago, that it might be an idea to look at an insurance-based system. Straight away, and I don't know how this happens, only one's mind that is so blissfully uninformed and hasn't bothered to look would suggest that that comment means we will have an American system. There's about 130 different systems around the world, by the way. I don't know why cynics of any private element always point to America. Insurance-based systems exist in lots of our nearest neighbours, in Germany, in France, and places like that. Doesn't mean you're going to start charging for treatment. It just means you have a different way of financing the entire health service. But people lose their minds over that, and Rebecca is quite right. If it had cut anything that's said like this under the Tories, remember when Trump was over here with Theresa May, And he didn't do her any favours. He said everything's for sale. He's going to buy our NHS. I mean, you can't really buy the NHS. It exists in so many millions of different parts. There is no one thing you could purchase. So that's not going to happen. But if Reform look at a different model, then that's surely to be encouraged, isn't it? We need people to look at a model that works better than the current one. Let's move then to some other stories in the world of politics, and we'll start by speaking with Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister, joining us now. Anne, good morning to you.
Morning to you.
You will be aware from being in government, I mean, that, you know, the minute you dip your toe into the word privatisation, when said in close proximity to the words NHS, you're in trouble.
Yes, but the fact is that the NHS, which after all was set up in the 1940s, you know, it's worth remembering that, was set up on several false premises. Bevan seriously thought that demand would decline, instead of which, of course, medical and surgical sciences pushed it almost infinity. He didn't take into account, because he could not have foreseen, quite impossible then, the enormous rise in longevity. In 1950, the average woman's longevity was 69. Now it's 83. And that's had a tremendous impact. And finally, of course, Bevan thought that what in those days we called the stamp, that is to say national insurance, would play a much larger part than it now does play in financing the health service. So it was set up on false premises. And if we asked ourselves now, and I've been saying this for donkey's years, what we need is a national debate in which all prejudices are laid aside, asking ourselves, if we were setting up a health service from scratch now, knowing what we know now, which we didn't know in the 1940s, what would we do? And out of the things that we could do, what should we then choose? And then the big question, how do you get there from here?
Indeed, the entire comment, you're absolutely right, and it doesn't even take a politician or a journalist to know this, really. It's pretty obvious that, you know, we're just shy of 100 years ago when this was began, when Henry Willink, people never talk about Henry, the Conservative health minister that first waved that white paper, not a Labour health person. When that was all being discussed, of course, Labour happened to be in power when it was implemented, but nobody would have imagined longevity, the innovations in healthcare that can keep people alive, not just for an extra couple of weeks, but for decades.
As I always put it, and this is very simplistic, but it's a good illustration. Before there was any hip replacement surgery, there was no queue for hip replacements. And as soon as you get any medical or surgical advance, this huge tail of demand comes behind it. And it's a problem that Bevan thought that because we had a health service, we'd all get healthier, which we have. He was right on that. But then he thought that because we all got healthier, demand would decline. That was his reasoning. And of course, the polar opposite has happened.
Well, there is a man that's going to sort it out, Anne, so our conversation is frankly irrelevant, because Andy Burnham is going to be the new Messiah in number 10. He's got it all sorted out. Just nudge a bit more to the left and life is good again. What are you making of this curious campaign from Mr Burnham, which is meant to be a constituency campaign, but of course it isn't really. It's become a ploy, a plot, if you like, to get to number 10.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't a constituency campaign. It's all about what Burnham will do if he becomes Prime Minister. And if he gets into Parliament, I'm afraid that prospect is horribly likely. But he's now focusing on nationalisation, on state control. Now, some of us are actually old enough to remember the days of nationalisation. I can remember when you bought all your utilities from the state, even your telephone. You got everything from the state. And the reason that things were privatised was straightforwardly that system did not work. Consumers had no choice. You had to put up with poor service because these were state monopolies. They never call it that. They never say, we're going to create a state monopoly. They say we're going to nationalise something. It means a state monopoly. Now, I am the first to concede that there are certain things that have gone wrong. Water, and to a certain extent also the railways. But the answer to that is not to have a state monopoly. What Reform's suggesting is that where you have got something that's failing, the government should take back half of it, but the other half should belong to the pension funds.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not a massive state monopoly.
Indeed, I think the French have been rather good at that over the years, haven't they?
Yeah.
We will watch with interest what happens here. Of course, this lurch to the left, more generally, in addition to utilities and what the government owns as distinct from the private sector. Mr. Burnham's journey is curious and interesting, of course, because he was a Blairite, and certainly in Labour terms that wouldn't be called left wing in Labour terms. Then he was a bit Corbyn-y because that sort of suited his second run to become leader of the Labour Party. Now it's his third run, and he's kind of reverting back a little bit to the left. He senses, I guess, Anne, that there are more votes in putting yourself out there as a left-winger than there are as a centrist or a right-winger.
But I think the crucial question in all this, Ian, is what does Andy Burnham actually believe? I mean, never mind where he thinks he should position himself in order to, to win the necessary number of votes and get himself back into Parliament. What does he actually believe? Now, we know what Corbyn believes. We know what Blair believes. Polar opposites within the Labour Party, but we know what they stand for. I have no clue what Burnham believes because he performs U-turns almost as regularly as Keir Starmer. Yeah. And it's crucial that you know what somebody believes when you're deciding whether to vote for them or not.
And it is curious to go back to, big state, big bureaucracy, which every bit of evidence tells us. I know every time we speak, I seem to mention this. When you and I had a glass of wine on the last day that the UK was in the EU over there in Brussels. And I remember just before we met up, looking at that building that went on forever, absolutely huge, the vastness of it, the sheer monolithic nature of it. And of course, that was just one of their many buildings. There was a whole other parliament down the way there in Strasbourg. You look at that and you realise, where things go wrong and why we voted to leave. And here we have a potential Prime Minister looking not only to make the state bigger here, but we know he'd be in his happiest slippers if he was back there, probably at that same table we had the glass of wine on, over there in Brussels, because that's in his DNA.
It is in his DNA. I mean, he is undeniably a very, very convinced Remainer, and he thinks our future is in a failing institution, which is the EU. Now, he does believe that, and people need to take that into account. I mean, he's got the gall to be standing in one of the biggest Brexit voting constituencies in the entire country. Yeah. And he's got the gall to do that, being himself of the exact opposite point of view. But at least when it comes to the EU, he has been reasonably upfront about what he believes. Now, not entirely, because he has sort of backtracked and qualified things and hedged about. But I don't think anybody would say, well, I don't know where he stands on the EU.
Yes, indeed, that's fair. Let's look at this Alan Milburn story, Anne, because it's these reports that are commissioned by governments, Tory, Labour, whatever, they seem to wang on forever, don't they? We're waiting for these reports, and this Milburn one seems to have been going for a long time as well. But it came out finally yesterday, and he gave a speech to outline. Mr Milburn was a fairly widely respected character across the party, all-round affable chap, by all accounts, intelligent, and set out to try and find out what's gone wrong with young people. The conclusions, and it's a fairly thick report, so it's hard to get through all of it at the moment, but the conclusions seem to be that young people, we got over a million young people who are not working in training or education. That figure is set to grow over the next few years, where 1 in 6 young people will be in that position. His conclusion seems to be, yes, this is the case, but it's not the fault of young people. That's what I'm taking from this.
Well, I mean, I recall a documentary that I once did on the benefits culture. And I met somebody there who had come from Poland, and he was doing 4 jobs. He was doing 1 by day, 1 in the evening, 2 different ones at the weekend. And I said to him, don't you feel guilty that you are taking jobs from our young people here? And he said, your young people don't want them. And we've made it too easy. Now, I'm not saying that every poor soul who can't find a job is deliberately idle. I'm not saying that, but we have made it far too easy for people to live on benefit. and not to work. And that is what we've got to tackle. That is the first thing that's got to be tackled. We need a work culture, what Nigel Farage calls an alarm clock culture.
Yep.
We need that culture, and that is what has gone wrong. You've got whole generations now growing up with the example in front of them from their parents and grandparents even, that actually you don't need to work, the state will pay you to do nothing.
Indeed. And there used to be an old gag, and you mentioned the Polish chap. I mean, there used to be an old gag, how do you make an Eastern European laugh? Tell them about the British welfare system. Because these guys, whatever anybody thinks of Blair's open-door policy on immigration, these guys knew how to work, and they had a work ethic that was so admirable, and they were happy to do it. They never considered for 1 second that a government, let alone a government that wasn't even their own government, would be giving them any money. Now, that's all changed. It's changed a lot in Poland, of course, over those years. But there is a work ethic, and I genuinely think, perhaps this is what Mr Milburn means by this, Anne, when he says young people want to work, they've got lots of mental health issues. I don't dispute that that person, let's take individual A, they probably believe they do have a mental health issue because we've medicalised mild anxiety to become something far greater than it actually is.
Indeed. And that is exactly why reform says that, there won't be benefits in future for non-serious anxiety issues. I mean, we have now taught an entire generation, almost 2 generations, we've taught them that if things are going wrong, it isn't their fault. There's nothing they can do about it. It's all about, anxiety. There's labels for just about everything. And what we have to get back to is self-reliance and self-motivation with a bit of help. You always need a bit of help, of course, but that's what we need.
We do indeed. Anne, great to have you on as ever. Thank you for your time. Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister. We talked a lot there about Makerfield, so let's have a listen and run over the candidates who are standing in that June the 18th by-election. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats. Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer, Independent. Ed Gemmell, Climate Party. Paul Gould, Independent. Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. And they are the candidates standing in Makerfield. Let's get a couple of voice notes here on worth ethic. Firstly, worth ethic. I've got all Angela Rayner on you. Work ethic. This is one from Sharon. Morning, Sharon.
My grandson is coming up 14, and he's been out yesterday looking for a job. He wants a job. He's been round every place, but they can't set him on because he's not 16. But he wants to work now because he said he doesn't want to go to university, so he's been out. I think not every child is, don't want to work, but he wants to work, and he's really disappointed because now he's got to wait another 2 years. He's took the initiative himself and he's gone door knocking for work. So anyway, good show, Sharon from Yorkshire.
Thank you, Sharon. I mean, that's so encouraging to hear. It's almost like brings a tear to the eye. There's a diligent young man there. And, it's worth saying 2 years as a 15-year-old. It's not like 2 years as an adult. 2 years as a 15-year-old might as well be another century away. I mean, it seems a long old time to get through that. But, bureaucracy standing in the way. You want to work. You've got everything to give. You're going to be reliable. You're going to turn up on time. Just can't get the job because the bureaucracy and the computer says no. For some reason, we're talking about favourite lags. How did we even get talking about prisoners? Oh, Peter Murrell, of course, Mr Sturgeon, who's obviously going to be serving a little bit of time at His Majesty's pleasure. He's currently on remand awaiting sentencing. That's what got us into this. And somehow, I don't know whether we were talking about celebrity lags, favourite lags. I mean, is there such a thing as having your favourite lag? Did you ever have that conversation? Who's your favourite lag, Barry? Oh, it's got to be old Mickey the Fingers McGrath, isn't it? Here's one on this very subject. Comes from Sean. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Ian. I'm a bit late today. Sean Cheshire. I would just like to add my favourite lag would have to be the one and only Fletcher. All right, Fletcher from Porridge.
I tell you what, that touch. Thank you so much for that, Sean. That touches something we were talking earlier about. People who almost play themselves on TV. And I mentioned interviewing Ken Barlow once, William Roach, and he's exactly the same as Ken Barlow. His mannerisms, his voice, it's like it's the same bloke sitting there. I'm sure his personality is a little different, but it's like the same bloke. Fletcher, which is, when you watch an old episode of Porridge, it's almost mesmerising how good Ronnie Barker is in that role. I mean, it's just exquisite. His acting skills are amazing. Then you hear him speak in real life, and there's no Fletcher there. There's no open all hours there. He's a nicely spoken, a completely different character. His role of Fletcher was just sublime. It was just in a different class in terms of sitcom characters. And I don't think that gets shown enough. They show 40 Towers and Fours and Horses a little bit. I'm sure someone's going to say it's on a gold channel somewhere. It probably, I hope it is, because it's brilliant. I'm sure you can check it out on YouTube as well. Thank you to Sean. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So many subjects up and running here. Good morning, by the way, 8:25. Jeremy Kyle is back on Monday here on Talk Breakfast. The NHS, of course, featuring heavily over that suggestion. Doctors could vote to decide whether we have a kind of Netflix-style subscription service that you pay to see your GP. Would you be up for some of that? On the issue of the NHS, here's a voice note from Sean. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Ian. Sean from Grimsby here. This paying for your doctor sounds great, doesn't it? If you've got a job like I have, I'm going to have to pay to see the doctor, yet my unemployed next-door neighbours who've never had a job are going to be able to see a doctor, and it's not going to cost them anything because they're on benefit money. And this is the problem we have. More and more people are getting on benefit money, so it's going to cost us more and more and more. I mean, this is just ridiculous again. It's punishing working people again. Nuts, mate.
You're not wrong, Sean. Absolutely bang on. I don't know which bit politicians don't get. The only thing I can ever think, and somebody did loosely kind of impart it this way to me, is because you could be like a really quite brutal government well, some would say it's not brutal at all. Some would simply argue that it's a reasonable view to be really strict and diligent on benefits and just say, right, none of that group of people, whether you're foreign national and unemployed, whether you are long-term unemployed but no good reason for all of that, it's going to cut all of those benefits. There's going to be no benefits. And the answer, apparently, from the powers that be, is that if you want to see a chaotic world where you think it's chaotic and all those people are on benefits that shouldn't be, then you wait till you see what it looks like when all those same people are not on benefits and have zero, including their kids. And you get into that territory and you go, I don't necessarily know what the answer is. But that's why we elect politicians. 0344 499 1000. Let's speak with David Reid, MP, a real-life politician. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. How's life in the Shadow Defence Department?
It's good, but we are pushing forwards now, so there's been no rest for us over recess. We've been waiting for the Defence Investment Plan from the government for 9 months now. This is a deadline that they set for themselves.
Yeah.
And without boring your listeners about another government documents, the document we're pushing for, we're going to push a vote for it next week, sets out the blueprint of where defence is going to go for the coming years. And we all know how volatile the world has become. So our defence industry and our armed forces need a clear route, and we need to have that proper conversation with where the money comes from. And we're pushing the government into that position.
There is always this question of, percentage of GDP in defence, and it should be 5%, and Donald Trump never stops talking about it, and we understand why, but it's notched up a little bit. I mean, are we ever going to get to this 5% thing? I mean, it's very easy. 5% sounds like a small number until you transpose that into real, actual figures, and it's a ton of money.
It really is. And look, 5% is a lot of money when you think about how much the country brings in every year. But I would much rather do it when we still have the ability to build our defences up, build our armed forces up, given how volatile the world is. So if we look back to World War II and to other major conflicts, the amount of money that you have to spend on defence at a time of conflict shoots up rapidly. Yeah. So we can either do all the preparatory work now and make sure that we're in a strong position to deter any type of conflict, or get drawn into something and realise that we're completely unprepared and have to spend a lot more money, and it's much more painful for the British public.
In terms of the wider issue of Parliament right now, as you say, recess over soon, back to normal business, and possibly you guys are going to be looking across the House at PMQs and the like to a different face in the coming, well, potentially the coming weeks. I mean, things could happen that fast. Mr. Burnham, the new Prime Minister. What's the feeling on the shadow front bench?
For me, and look, I'm a former Royal Marine. I came into politics because I care deeply about where the country's going. For me, this is so bad for the country, and Kemi has drawn this out at PMQs before. We need stability, and we are at a period now where we have increased conflict, we have volatility around the world. And when we talk about things like the Defence Investment Plan, which has been pushed down the track by the current Prime Minister, and it may be pushed down the track by whoever comes in, this is not good for the country. So for all of Labour's messes, this is their problem. They need to get on with it and hopefully come up with a solution very quickly. But it doesn't deter us from coming up with policy in opposition and making sure that we're in a strong position so that if we are fortunate enough to form the next government, we can hit the ground running. And I think this just shows to me, if you come into government without a plan and you come up with things on the fly, nothing good happens. Like anything. Any of your listeners that run businesses or work in businesses, they will know you need a plan to be able to get on with the job.
Spot on. Are you asking them for Keir Starmer to stay? Is this a Tory request to don't go, Keir? Please don't go.
I think he's run out of road. I think if we just look at the Labour voices now that have come out against him, Labour grandee Sir Tony Blair has come out now and said that there was no plan.
Yep.
Leadership people are coming up, people like Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham. This train has already left the station. So regardless of what the Conservatives say, the Labour Party is in turmoil at the moment, and the Conservatives need to do what the country wants us to do, which is actually come up with policy and hold the government to account. And that's what I'm focused on.
Well, I mean, one of the points, just to pick up on the Blair thing, he said, look, we're about to become a country that has its 7th Prime Minister in, 10 years. And That never used to be the case. We used to kind of mock, satirise the Italians for that kind of track record. They've been rather consistent over the last few years. But that's where we're at. And his overarching point seemed to be, David, that, look, if you don't have an underpinning philosophical ideology, a direction, a roadmap, whatever you want to call it, then you're stuffed. And clearly Labour have really suffered from not having that. Have the Tories got one? Because you guys are in a really tricky position. I know we're a few years away from a general election, but I don't know how many doors you have to knock on, David, before someone says to you, 14 years of misery, 14 years of disaster. I mean, it's slightly been sort of exaggerated beyond recognition now, but that does come up. Why would people trust the Tories? And what does your roadmap look like?
So, for me, coming into politics in 2024, of course, I heard those tropes thrown at us. Trust is rebuilt over a long period of time. For us to come out and say, right, we have a fully costed plan, it's ready now, would be disingenuous. And Kemi has been very strong. She's an engineer by trade. She has looked across every single government department to understand what needs to be done. She is looking at the problems between problems, because a lot of the issues that we see are interconnected. And she's making sure that there is conservative ideology that runs through all of those different plans. We are working on them. I'm in the shadow defence team. I know that we're working very, very heavily on that, and I see that right across all the different shadow briefs. There is no substitute for hard work, and we're getting on with the job. Because the big lesson that I've learned coming into Parliament, and I've said this, if you come in with no plan, everyone suffers. There has to be a good plan that the public buy into, and that's the way that you bolster trust, and that's what we're getting on with now.
Is your hope, and I don't even know if there's a kind of sort of a standard answer to this, really, reformer having I wouldn't say the reform have got the wobbles as such, but they very much seem to have stabilised in their rising star, and maybe over Makerfield and a few other areas as well. The mood music around them is muted a little bit. I think that's fair. Restore Britain, who quite literally didn't exist half an hour ago, seemed to be trying to shoot the reform fox, and could well find that they succeed at that during Makerfield. Is the idea that in this sea of choice that was never ever there before, of course, it was just a very straightforward set of names on the ticket, in a sea of choice, that Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives come through as the sort of sensible adults in the room? You've heard that lot, they're okay, we agree with some of it, but they're all over the place. That lot over there, even Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks they're too extreme, so they're all over the place. But actually, we're here to tell you how it's done. Is that the kind of thinking, even if it's not being said out loud in shadow cabinet meetings?
So in this new environment of multi-party politics, there is no substitute for hard work, and I will keep banging on about that. It's what Kemi tells us repeatedly, is that I want to be able to go to the public at the next general election and hold up a manifesto that's coherent, that people buy into, that's costed, and most importantly, people trust that we're going to deliver. Now, Ian, you said the word ideology. I think it's actually quite important to have an ideology, and the Conservative ideology has been around for hundreds of years. We need to get back to our roots, and that needs to be applied. That centre-right thinking needs to be applied to every single area of governments, and we need to work out how to improve the lives of the British people and put us on a pathway that we all buy into. Now, when I look at opposition parties, and I get bored of looking over my shoulder and seeing what other parties are doing, we need to focus on what the Conservatives are doing. But there is no ideology within those parties. They do some quite left-wing things, they do some quite right-wing things. And I understand why lots of people went to those parties. I understand. There were a lot of mistakes made over the last few years of the governments. Kemi has been very clear about that. But I don't see that Reform and Restore or the Greens have any of the answers. They are saying the things that people want to hear, exactly what Labour did before the general election. We need to have the hard conversations with the public around where the country's going, and we need buy-in, and we need to build that trust. And that will all be done by hard work. It's what I've been doing over the recess period on defence, and I know all my colleagues in the Conservative Party are doing the exact same.
David, good to have you on, sir. Thank you. Have a great weekend. David Reid, MP, Shadow Defence Minister. The Tories can break through and come back. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I kind of miss, bearing in mind the Conservative Party, you consider it was, some would say it's still clinging on to it, the most successful political brand in the Western world. There is no party that has been more successful, I think I'm right on this, than the Conservatives. And if you consider the faces over the years, and of course Thatcher would epitomise all of this, the strength, the solidity of the Conservative brand, the Conservatives, they are the grown-ups in the room. I always used to say that, you know, when I was about 17 and thought I was a left-winger for about 5 minutes, the Labour Party were like your cool uncle or auntie that you like going round to see at Christmas, because they were fun. The Conservatives were like your mum and dad. They're slightly more serious. Who wants your mum and dad running the country? But actually, when you look at it now, that's how they've been. And they've lost all of that. They lost that so spectacularly. They lost it after Brexit. Remember, the Conservatives campaigned to remain in the EU. I know there were splinter groups, but the Conservative, David Cameron's government, they campaigned to remain in the EU, and they lost that vote. And then COVID happened, and that all went pear-shaped. They didn't deal with it particularly well. We weren't seeing great numbers anywhere. I think since 2016, we've been unmanageable, ungovernable. And we can blame some events, and we can blame circumstances and things we didn't expect. But we also have to blame politicians. They've become complacent. So the Tory, nobody's going to shed a tear for the Conservatives losing their status as this most successful party in the world, and aren't they fantastic, and Thatcher and Churchill and all the rest of it. That they have themselves to blame for this, fairly and squarely. The question is, can they come back? The eyes will be on them, along with all of the others as well. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note on the NHS. That's another big one here this morning. This comes from Paul. Morning to you, Paul.
Morning, Ian. It's Paul from Cornwall, military veteran. This paying to see your GP, what a load of rubbish. And they talk about Farage, or supposedly doing away with the NHS, which he isn't, not their policy. So if you're going to pay to see your GP, how about the working person no longer having to pay national insurance contributions? Because that's what it's for, isn't it? To cover your NHS, your health and stuff like that. So I think it's a load of rubbish. Why paying twice? Double jeopardy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Just lob my headphones in. Thank you very much. 20-9. I'd forgotten this. We were talking about favourite lags. Mark in Bolton says, my favourite lag, Mr. Cheap as Chips himself, David Dickinson of Bargain Hunt fame, served 3 years of a 4-year sentence at Strangeways prison. It's in Manchester, for those who don't know. Back in the early 60s, he was convicted of mail order fraud. Really? I didn't know that. You wouldn't. I bet you wouldn't get that prison sentence now. And to serve 3 years of 4 years is extraordinary. 0344 499 1000. It is 20 to 9 here on Talk. Let's speak with Jake Wallace-Simons, author and columnist. Jake, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Always nice to speak. We've got a lot going on here today. The news agenda never ever stops. But I never thought when we talk about anti-Semitism and all that goes on that I would be talking about Helen Mirren in all of this. But a really unsavoury event happened in the streets when Helen Mirren, and I think that was her partner or her husband, I think she was walking with. And it's always nice to see an A-lister being able to go out and about with a load of security around them. But sometimes you can understand why they do have security around them after this happened. Let's have a look.
And there's Helen Mirren, the avowed Zionist. She said Israel should last forever because of the Holocaust. And she was very happy the Palestinian houses. You put the post up, you evil old bag. You're an evil Zionist. And you as well, you and all.
Jake, I know we've talked about this kind of thing before, but what makes somebody think they have a free pass to talk to a total stranger to them in the street, in public, like that? How did we get there?
I've got to say that when I first saw that clip, I was reminded, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but I was reminded of 1930s Germany, because it's this sort of weird mania that grips people. Yes. It's this contagion that makes them so convinced that they're in the right, and they've got to preach and force the rest of the world into submission to their views. And underpinning it is this anti-Semitic view. I mean, this man, whoever he is, he's been partly identified online, but it's not confirmed. Palestine and Israel has nothing to do with him. He's a British middle-aged man who's drunk the Kool-Aid, who believes that Israel is this satanic, evil country that's worse than any other country is, was, or will ever be. And that's nothing if not anti-Semitic. I mean, anti-Semitism begins with hallucinating Jews as being the source of all evil, devilish. You know, ever since the Middle Ages to now, that's been the trope. Once you believe in your heart that the Jews are devils, then you're suddenly justified in this kind of behaviour.
Well, that is absolutely right. I mean, it's a little like if you condemn Chairman Mao or Saddam Hussein, nobody criticises you, do they, for having a pop at a wicked, murdering dictator. And these people are so deranged that they've placed Israel, all of it, including all of its people, any Jew, because they are by definition connected, someone like me who's not Jewish but would have understanding, sympathies and knowledge of this story, somebody like Helen Mirren, who had the audacity to apparently say, I don't know what her specific words were, apparently say that, you know, in some interview that Israel has the right to exist, and she mentioned the Holocaust. That was enough for somebody so completely demonised had this man and others made Israel, that therefore his starting position was one of punching up, and that's how these people seem to see it.
Exactly right. I mean, if you see Jews as being not just evil but controlling the world, then you always feel that you're representing the underdog against these evil Jews. Now, if Jews controlled the media, I tell you what, the media would be rather different than it is at the moment. But Helen Mirren is a very good example, because she is somebody who has been friendly towards Israel ever since she was there as a young person just after the Six-Day War in 1967 on a kibbutz. She knows Israel quite well. She acted, of course, the part of Golda Meir, recently Israel's first female prime minister, a few years ago in that film Golda. And she has spoken about her support for Israel's right to exist, that supposedly controversial idea, after the Holocaust. But at the same time, she's said that she's no fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. Not that it's anything wrong to be a fan of him particularly, if those are your politics, but she isn't. She's distanced herself from this controversial right-wing government and was supportive of the protests against his government, really. So she's no kind of right-wing, headbanger, no supporter of the settlements or anything like that. She's quite moderate, but she just accepts that Israel is a wonderful place alongside its dark side, as every other country, every other democracy is. We have a dark side and a light side, and Israel is the only meaningful democracy in the Middle East, the only place where women, gay people and minorities can have equal rights, the only place where women and everybody else can vote in free and fair elections, the only place with the rule of law, the only place with the gay pride march, for goodness sake, in the entire region that's very thriving thriving and vibrant. It's the only place that anybody wants to live. Even people who are critical of Israel go there and report and stay in Israel because it's much better than staying anywhere else. It is our ally, and it's an important beacon of liberal democracy for all its flaws and for all its dark sides. It's a real country that's on our side of the argument, and she simply sees it that way, and for that she's abused in the street.
Yeah, and I was going to make exactly the point you just made there, Jake. I mean, if you want to look to the Middle East and say, well, which country would you go and live in out there? Israel, which is a tiny place, of course, in comparison to some of the huge countries that surround it. It sits there in solitary almost from all of that other influence that is around them. But as for whatever reason has become the totemic figure of misplaced anger, derangement syndrome, and all manner of other things. And when I look at this in the street, aside from anything else, look, if you're Helen Mirren is an A-list, globally known actor. She's used to the fact that, and she's very accessible as well. If somebody stops her in Tesco, she'll stop and have a chat. She's sort of known for that. But she's also a private citizen. She's an 80-year-old woman. It's dark at night with her husband, who appears to be of similar age. I don't think that's okay on that point either, to be honest, Jake. I mean, this is bullying and harassment.
Yeah, I mean, again, it does unfortunately bring to mind the 1930s in Germany, when street thuggery was the norm, where you had fascists and communists, radicals from both sides, battling each other in the street. And of course, we're not there yet. I don't want to catastrophize this or sort of build it up. But nonetheless, these people are so convinced that they are the sole warriors of good against the evil Jew and his influence around the world, that they'll take to the streets in this way, accosting a woman who is 80 years old, walking with her husband innocently in the street, intimidating and bullying her. I mean, these are, in a way, the new progressive fascists. They brook no dissent. They're totally inflexible with their arguments. They just believe that they're in the right and wish to dominate society, dominate any opposition. They're not available for different perspectives, they're not pro-free speech. They want to quash anybody who differs from their views. And they want to build society in their image. And actually, they are aligning themselves with the jihadis who wish to bring us down. They are furthering a jihadi agenda, which has a similar quest of domination, a similar intolerance to any kind of other opposing views, and a similar intolerance of liberalism. And they have their views, and they have this activism as a result of 3 years plus of incessant propaganda from the jihadis, from social media, from the mainstream media, continuously showing us Israel's bad side, or examples of war that they then take to be an example of genocide wrongly and pin on Israel, to try to turn people's hearts and minds against our only ally in the region, without any balance, without any context of why Israel is fighting this war. And this is the result of that propaganda. And it's a really worrying time for Jews.
It's awful to see this. And this is just one incident, of course, of many that are happening every single day in this country. Jake, thank you as ever. Great to have you with us. Jake Wallace-Simons, author and columnist, who speaks very fluently and passionately, and rightly so, on these issues. The Helen Mirren thing, it's heartbreaking to see, because she's almost still trying to be polite in the clip. She's kind of smiling, not patronisingly smiling. She's sort of like, oh, hello, and there she is. It's night time as well, so that puts it at the moment probably after 10 o'clock at night, I'd imagine, walking through the streets of London with her husband, and she's accosted in the most barbaric, rude, intimidating, bullying fashion by someone who thought it was perfectly okay, because she said she's okay with Israel. She likes Israel. Not a fan of the government, not a fan of Netanyahu, understands some of the protests. That's all she'd said, and she was brutalised and attacked that way. I hope that guy, because, we like jailing people for hurty words in this country. I hope he does about 5 years for that, frankly. He won't, by the way. Spoiler alert, he won't. Let's go back to our other story, the worst youth worklessness crisis since records began. Only one man we should really speak to on this, Charlie Mullins, founder of WeFix. Charlie, morning to you. Nice to have you with us. Look, we've talked a lot over the years, certainly about your beginnings, your humble beginnings. You knew what it was like to grab a bag of tools, nip in your van, go and fix things. Plumbing was your game, and you knew that if you wanted to do it and you thought, yeah, I could do it, I also want to make a few quid along the way. You've done that successfully. You didn't do it by sitting on your backside. You did it because you got out there, knocked on doors, spoke the right language, and was willing to work long hours. Is that a fair assessment?
You got it spot on, and I think that's all that today's youth have to do, is to stop being cowards and wimps and get out there and do a manual job where there's a massive demand for it. They're still being directed to university, which is a waste of time. I mean, I checked out on that AI system, and they say that the demand is for plumbers and electricians. Now, these people are supposed to be, they're supposed to have half a brain. I mean, surely you check that out before you sign up for university. There's going to be a lot less work when AI comes out. So the answer is, get an apprenticeship, get into a manual trade, earn a fortune, never be out of work, and stop being like a wimp and a coward. I mean, any excuse is not to go to work. And I think we have 16 to 24 that are not working, 500,000 are not even looking, and unfortunately, people like myself, well, no, not me, because I've obviously come away from the country, but obviously we still have a WeFix business there, but we're paying for these people, so we need to toughen up a little bit on them, and I'm not going to say force them to work, but what I am going to say is don't give them no money if they don't go to work.
What have you, or did you notice over the years? Because you've had all sorts of people work for you, Charlie. I think you even had back in the day the world's oldest worker.
The oldest worker. Well, if I'm being honest, older people are better to employ at the moment. They've got the drive, they've got the enthusiasm. When people go to work, they're a lot more happier. But what you're finding now, the guys that are coming in for work, I mean, you can't tell if they're man or woman, and and that's an off-putting thing. You know what I mean? We need to establish who they are. We don't want no oddballs working for WeFix. So but they're coming in. They don't want the job. They're scruffy. They got no enthusiasm, no drive. And then we have another lot of people are begging for work, and they work for nothing. So we have this mixture out there. But I'm going to blame the education system. I'm going to blame university, and I'm going to blame parents that haven't got a clue how to, make a future for their children. I mean, nobody made me a future. I made a decision to be a plumber. Nothing complicated. But now, if somebody goes into plumbing, blimey, I mean, they're going to earn a fortune. And more apprentices were getting applied to us, because the other company I was with, they got rid of all their apprentices. So we took a few on. We just took a girl electrician, and some of the youngsters out there, honestly, they got so much drive, it's unbelievable. But the wimps, the cowards, the people that sit on this iPad all night and do nothing and know nothing and can't speak. I mean, they should, I've got to be honest, put them in national service and make them earn some money.
There is a problem there. There is a bureaucracy issue as well, though, isn't there, Charlie? Something that's not helping this, and that is the world of government intervention, where the form filling, the rules and the regulations about, what used to be a simple knock on the door. If you got my auntie became a nurse by literally knocking on the door of a hospital back in the day. She said, "Have you got any jobs?" They went, "All right, fill this form and you can come and train with us." If she was no good, they'd have got rid of her. But she was fine.
You are right. You are right. I mean, they've complicated things. But you ain't got to be that clever to fill a form in, and you ain't got to be that clever to go to an interview and show a bit of enthusiasm and drive. And the work is out there. Believe me, the work is out there. The Gen Z generation, they say they're the worst. They're the worst people. I mean, let's be fair. Call them what you want to call them, but they're lazy so-and-sos.
There it is. Go on that. I've got to interject, Charlie, just because of time. You've been brilliant as ever. Thank you, Charlie Mullins, founder of WeFix. He knows all about that kind of ethic of knocking on the door, putting the graft in. If you put the graft in, you get the rewards. It's all pretty simple stuff. Thank you to Charlie. Nick in Nuneaton says, if we are to be forced to start paying to see a GP. Does that mean our national insurance payments will become optional instead of compulsory? It's a nice thought, isn't it? Just gone 5 to 9. Let's get some sport.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Let's get a word from Catherine Walsh, Manchester United reporter with The Sun. Catherine, good morning to you. Nice to have you with us. Of course, we'll come on to the big weekend of football because it doesn't really get any bigger, well, apart from that one in June, but this one is like up there. And it involves a club in this country, not your club, not my club, but nonetheless, we wish them well. We'll come to that sort of in a moment. But let's talk FIFA to start with. There it is. It's on The Sun, and you can see it as a big headline. It's all kicking off. This is illegal ticket hikes. Front page today. What's happening?
Yep, so this is a problem that's been going on for several months just leading up to the World Cup, but FIFA must answer to these allegations of artificially inflating prices and misleading fans on those prices for tickets across the United States. Yeah. We know that tickets in America for most sports are high anyway. So this is definitely going to impact fans majorly. Yeah,
I just bought an FA Cup final ticket or a couple of weeks ago to see Chelsea. Sadly, not to do what I wanted them to do, but it was a great event. And the prices are off the scale. When you get into World Cup territory, of course, it's always in another league, as is Champions League football as well. There's another tournament, comes to fruition tomorrow. Arteta staying or going? Well, is that deal going to be decided before tomorrow's big final?
Yeah, so the owners of Arsenal, Josh Kroenke, has said that it's the utmost priority to keep Arteta. His contract does expire next summer, but he wants it tied up regardless of whether Arsenal will win the Champions League or not. Yeah. They've won a first Premier League title in 22 years, so they think this is the start of a new adventure of winning trophies.
Yeah, I was having a chat with a smug Spurs fan just yesterday, a mate of mine, of course, after last weekend's drama. And you get into that territory, you know, Champions League final. Who do you want to win, a French side or an English side? Now, ordinarily, you go, it's an English side. But, of course, if you're a United fan, or as I'm a Chelsea fan, then that does compromise you somewhat.
Yes, definitely. And I think with Arsenal, there's such controversy around them and their fans and the pundits and the media. So it kind of exacerbates that feeling of, oh, maybe we don't want an English team to win. But if they do, it will be 3 English teams winning in the finals of those 3 tournaments after Aston Villa did, and Palace. And
Palace, of course. There's only one PSG. I'll leave it at that, shall I? Listen, Catherine, great to have you with us. That's Catherine Walsh, Manchester United reporter at The Sun. Let's get the news headlines. Back with more from you coming after this.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 3 minutes, 4 minutes even after 9 o'clock. Good morning. Welcome to the home of common sense, absolutely rammed to the gills. We're talking about Andy Burnham. Why would we not be? He wants to be our next Prime Minister, of course, and he's calling for more state control. I always thought the direction of travel in a sane, sensible, forward-thinking Western democracy is to have less state intervention and control. I just kind of assumed that was intrinsic in the basic roadmap of modern living. Apparently not. Our Andy wants to go big on bureaucracy. Details to come. Would you pay to see a GP? There's going to be a vote. MPs, or doctors I should say, will decide on whether to have a Netflix-style subscription service, much like dentists. What's not to like? That much-awaited Alan Milburn report finally came out yesterday. We've been discussing the work ethic of youngsters. What has gone wrong there in terms of having an ethic and the right idea and approach to getting into the workplace? And Nicola Sturgeon says she's enjoyed the worst week of her life. I think the old man's probably had a worse one because he's languishing on Sea Wing at the moment, waiting to be sentenced, undoubtedly for, I would say, 3 years minimum, maybe a little more. Who knows? Public responsibility and all of that business. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. Jeremy Kyle back on Monday. Melanie in Suffolk says, morning Ian, my son also desperate for a job at 14 and experienced many refusals, but when he was 15, a local restaurant loved his CV so much they created a job for him that also worked around his full-time college hours. He's now 18, still has that job and also works another job which he gets through work experience. He finishes college at the end of July and both jobs have offered him full-time positions. There is hope for the young. There absolutely is. My heart sings when I read stuff like that, and thank you, Melanie, and good luck to your lad as well, because I'm sure Melanie's done a brilliant job of parenting, but also that, you know, a 14 and a 15-year-old, they're not babies, they're not full adults, I get that, but they have an inkling, right? They have an idea at that stage. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to find a way to do it. I mean, certainly when I wanted to get into this industry, I was thinking about it at that kind of age. And I remember my mum, and it was quite heartbreaking, really, who sort of sat me down and said, I have no idea how to get you into this world. You know, we just don't know anybody who does anything like that. And I said, don't worry, there'll be a way. I'll find a way. And I did. A lot of working for free back then as well. I didn't mind doing that. That kind of went with the territory. Let's speak with Annabel Denham, senior political commentator at The Telegraph, another journalist with a great work ethic. I know you're not afraid of long hours, Annabel. It's in your blood to aim for perfection. You like diligence. You like things done correctly. And that's why you essentially have a job and have been employed all of your adult life. Would that be fair? Sorry, I'm blowing a lot of smoke there, but you take the point.
You are. I welcome the flattery, Ian.
Of course.
And naturally, I return the praise. But yes, no, aside from maternity leave, which is a different sort of work.
What? I didn't know about. Get Denham off. She took time off when she had babies.
Well, look at what is happening to our fertility rate, Ian.
That's very true, yeah.
Having more babies, otherwise our work at a grey ratio is going to deteriorate and fast.
Well, we've got a problem here, haven't we? Because we're slowly getting to that stage of 1 in 6 youngsters will not be in work, education or training. At the moment, it's still over 1 million. I mean, the figures are shocking.
Oh, I mean, they are. They're absolutely terrifying because we know that if young people are out of employment, it has a permanent scarring effect over the course of their lifetimes. It'll mean lower average earnings over the course of their lives. It'll make it a lot harder for them to actually ever get a foot on the ladder, trapping people in this cycle of dependency on the state. And so we have to find a way to address this problem. And let's see, I commend Alan Milburn for his broadly accurate diagnosis of the problem this week. But what we need to see are the recommendations, which we're told will be published in September. And I hope that he is going to be bold in the recommendations that he makes, and that he's going to accept that we have created a system where the incentives are skewed, where there isn't a strong enough encouragement for people to get into work, and where unfortunately it's too easy for people to live off others, live off the taxpayer, live off the state.
And I thought it was interesting, the upshot of, and again, there's more detail to come as we read and look at the significance of this report and whether the government do anything about it, because that's always key. These reports tend to have a great habit of costing six-figure numbers. They take a year, 2 years, whatever, to compile, and then they just quietly disappear somewhere. And you think, well, what was that all about? But what we do know from this is that Mr. Milburn seems to be saying that, there is a problem with young people, but it's not necessarily their fault. And I wonder, we seem to have medicalised quite a lot of normal life these days. And I think the spectrum, if you like, of what was what people would call mental health. So you've got sort of mild anxiety at one end, and then sort of full-blown, genuine neurological issues at the other. Much in the same way as what is sexism or racism today wasn't sexism or racism in the 70s. What was anxiety in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s is now a full-blown mental health issue. So young people probably genuinely believe it is, and I think that's the problem. It's not that they're all making it up. I think based on their own parameters of what is mental health, they believe they have a problem, and that just could be anxiety. It just could be a worry, but it will be defined and described as a mental health issue, even a crisis sometimes.
Well, I think two things are happening. The first is that as a society, we've come to lose any sense of the idea that work is good for you. And at the same time, that if you have mental health issues, that precludes you from work. We don't seem to push the message enough, I don't think, that if you are in employment, then it provides you with structure, it gives you a sense of purpose, it gives you an income, and it can be really beneficial. And some of, the Labour big beasts of previous decades did make this point. Individuals like the late Frank Field, for instance, was adamant that, there was dignity in work. Whereas now, I think you have a lot of young people who are simply unwilling to do the sorts of jobs that were once considered menial work, low-skilled work, that was once considered a rite of passage. And the second issue, I think, is that we do medicalise and pathologise absolutely everything now in our society. And surely it's going to be very damaging. Now, undoubtedly, something needs to be done about mental health services in the NHS. There are many people who aren't able to access the treatment that they need. But at the same time, I think that we are telling people that they have a condition which means that they can't work, that they can't participate in normal life, perhaps, when actually perhaps that isn't the case. And there's been this enormous sort of dilution of terms such as autism and ADHD. There's been a massive increase in the number of people who are getting diagnoses for these conditions, who are being signed on to out of work sickness benefit, disability benefit as a consequence. And, that in addition to potentially not being in the best interests of some of those individuals, it means that we're not able to give specialist care to those with the more severe symptoms. So you have parents of children who've got very severe autism, children who've got very severe autism, for instance, who are having to navigate these Kafkaesque systems to get EHCPs for their children, perhaps at school. And they're really, really struggling because the system is totally stretched. And at the end of the day, the government has a finite amount of money. It doesn't behave like that very often, but it does. And we cannot be in a situation where within the next 5 years, we're spending £400 billion on welfare. It is simply unsustainable. They're going to have to find ways to make cuts, and they're going to need to do it soon, because look what's happening with the national debt, look at what's happening with the tax burden. We are, I think, teetering on the edge of a cliff here.
But don't worry, Annabel Denham, because everything's going to be tickety-boo, because there's a new kid in town called Andy Burnham, and he's going to be sitting there picking the curtains for number 10 in about 3 weeks. So everything's going to be fine, because he's got a big idea. He's going to make everything good again, and neoliberalism is dead, and everything's been wrong, despite the fact that he was not only a subscriber to other forms of ideology like Blairism and even a nod to Thatcherism, despite the fact that he didn't just join up with that. He shouted about it from the rafters. But he's back with a different idea, apparently. We don't quite know what it is. It's just different.
Well, yes. I mean, this is the ultimate problem, isn't it? That Tony Blair has made another one of his interventions, which has been very astute in my view, just like his comments about net zero last year and our approach to decarbonisation. Governments do need a coherent analysis of the country's problems and a serious strategy for addressing them. And I think it's depressing that none of the leaders of any major party, nor indeed any of the leadership hopefuls, seem capable of matching Tony Blair's intellectual clarity, whether or not you agree with his conclusions. And Andy Burnham is insistent that he has the diagnosis and the solutions for all that ails Britain. But it's all, he doesn't seem to have any fully fledged, fully developed ideas in terms of how we're going to tackle our ongoing malaise. And the problem Keir Starmer had, well, one of the problems that Keir Starmer had, was in the years up to 2024, he focused on how to win, and he didn't seem to give any thought or consideration to how to govern. So the moment that he entered into number 10, he just sort of carried on carrying the Ming vase. And he didn't set out a strategy, he didn't set out a vision or an agenda, and he very quickly lost the faith of the Parliamentary Labour Party and indeed the British public, because he was buffeted by events, he was guided by polls, sort of by public opinion. And look at the mess that Labour now finds itself in. And there's nothing that Andy Burnham has said that has led me to believe that he won't find himself in precisely this situation a year or so from now, if he does find a path to number 10.
Well, indeed. And this sort of, King of the North and this, I've never, and I'm not making a party political point, genuinely, objectively, intellectually, I cannot see what, to coin a phrase, I can't see what all the fuss about Andy Burnham is. I don't understand. I mean, as a local MP, I'm sure he was great. He would maybe made a good job of health secretary back in the day. I don't really remember much about that. What his greatest hits were in the health department. But this sort of perception that he's somehow the saviour of something, I cannot find, and I promise you I've looked, I can't find what that's actually based on. It seems to be based on nothing more than a sort of an illusion, a perception that has sort of fast become a reality. But for what reason?
Well, polls suggest that he is the country's most popular politician. Again, that's slightly baffling. I suspect he benefits from not being in Westminster. He is slightly separate from the swamp and specifically the Starmer administration. So he is able to be a politician who is on the left of British politics, who he doesn't have that association in people's minds. Then you have the Manchester miracle. Well, you can sort of debate the accuracy of some of the claims, specifically his involvement in Manchester's prosperity, but undoubtedly there are pockets of Greater Manchester which have really prospered over the last few years and have seen heavy investment, state investment, for instance, and growth and productivity and those sorts of things. So, if you're in Manchester and you're feeling the effects of it, perhaps you would feel you'd view Andy Burnham very favourably. But I think that has its limitations because it partly relies on handouts from Westminster. Now, what is Andy Burnham going to do if he is in number 10 and he has regional mayors up and down the country asking him for handouts? At some point, he's going to have to say no because money will quickly run out. remarkable how many Labour MPs you'll speak to who will say, if Andy Burnham had run in Gorton and Denton, the by-election, which saw Labour shunted into third place, then he would have won. And there does seem to be this sort of credulous kind of belief that he really is the saviour of the Labour Party. And I suspect that they're going to be disappointed if he does get to Downing Street.
Well, we will see. And it's not long away until we find out the results, not just of that by-election, but of course what then happens next with the Labour leadership one. Annabelle, thank you for being on with us. Have a lovely weekend. Annabelle Denham, senior political commentator over there at The Telegraph. This is the Makerfield by-election we're referring to there, 18th of June. And these are the candidates. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats. Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer, Independent. Ed Gemmell, Climate Party. Paul Gould, Independent. Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one comes in from Leslie, who says, reference our health service. Let's not forget we have the world and its granny using our health services. Foreigners who know they can make it out to here, stay with the family, get their treatment for free, and can never get the money from them. Although all they can do is go round with a begging bowl. Plus the numbers on our small island country, sadly, our NHS is no longer ours anymore. Wasn't there a report not that long ago that looked at how much different countries owe to the NHS, supposedly for their citizens having treatment here? So if you come, yes, it's, if you come over from another country and I don't get run over by a bicycle or something, an ambulance will come and pick you up and you'll get all the treatment. Nobody will be searching your wallet for a credit card. but you will technically, depending on where you've come from, depending on what forms you might have filled in or not filled in, depending on your health insurance, there will be a cost to that. There is a cost for the NHS for some foreign nationals, not all. And the figures were absolutely huge from different NHS trusts across the country. They were like telephone number fees. They were ridiculous. But there's no mechanism to get it back. It's a bit like when diplomats get congestion charge tickets. I think Transport for London have got a bill of about £78 billion from 17 Americans that have notched up congestion. They'll never get it back. It just sort of stays there. But the rest of us will pay in some other shape or form. We're talking about worklessness and young people. Did you know, and this is interesting, that 27 young non-EU migrants are hired for every young Brit? And that's been the case since 2020. This is research from the Centre for Social Justice. Let's speak to Ben Gregg, who's head of welfare with the Centre. Morning to you, Ben.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, you look at this number. Here we are talking about young people don't want to work or can't work or whatever the reason is. Well, some young people clearly do, because there's 27 non-EU migrants getting hired for every Brit. What's happening?
Yeah, so I think this is a big part of the kind of NEETs issue that we've been talking about a lot, particularly over the last day with Alan Milburn publishing his review yesterday. And we think that this is part of sort of what we've seen since 2020, which is the kind of immediate issue we face in the NEETs. That Milburn's done a very good job looking at the kind of long-standing problems, the structural issue, but actually we've seen a spike recently. And part of that spike is that since 2020, in quite a weak economy, we've had quite large increases in employment costs. And at the same time, we've had a migration system that's made it easier for employers to kind of look abroad for alternative employees rather than sort of investing in young people who might not be as work ready. And so, as the statistics you've mentioned say, we've seen an increase in non-EU under 25s on payrolls of about 290,000 in the last 5 years, whereas we've only seen an increase of UK under 25s on payrolls of about 11,000. So it's a big part of this immediate issue for why NEET numbers are up.
I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, when we look at the entirety of this story, because of course the next big headline is, what happens next? Are we just going to keep seeing this increase in numbers? Does it just go up? We saw this figure again from the Milburn report, 1 in 6 young people in the next few years not in work, education or training. Many ways to look at this, not the disposition of these people, what's going on there. The sheer cost of this to the Exchequer is, we already know, certainly in welfare payments that are due to being sick, which many of these people will be, is unsustainable. I mean, it can't carry on, Ben. That's not an interpretation, that's a fact.
Absolutely. It's a huge issue that we need to tackle. And I think there's, there's both a supply issue and a demand issue. The supply issue in terms of young people coming through who are sort of ready and able to work, some of which we've looked at the Centre for Social Justice, some of which Milburn's review yesterday interestingly touched on and aligned with, the issues around the pipeline we have in schools from for young people who might not be fitted to go to university, and the lack of kind of vocational routes that get them work ready, the lack of that link into careers and jobs. But at the same time, we've got this demand issue with rising employment costs, with the kind of availability of workforce from abroad. And we're seeing sort of both of these issues at the same time. And I think we need both immediate action to tackle the availability of that labour through, for example, reintroducing the resident labour market test that requires firms to advertise to UK nationals before advertising abroad. But we also need some of the kind of long-term work to rewire our education system to make it fitted for getting young people into the jobs and careers that are in their area that they're suited for.
I wonder whether, this thing about young Brits not working, I do wonder. Do you remember that book Freakonomics, Ben? And there was a follow-up to it that was, that looked at sort of interesting interpretations of why certain things happen. I wonder if in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, one of these books are rewritten, whether there'll be another reason why young Brits were being displaced almost in some respects because of, we mentioned the 27 young non-EU migrants getting hired for every young Brit. Whether it's that, is there something else going on here? Is there some other social dynamic that we're not factoring in that has led to this? And when people talk about COVID being an issue, they talk about expectations being different and they've sort of been recalibrated in the minds of the young. The amount that people are willing to work for, fully aware that they'll work for a lot of years and won't be able to buy a house. Is it all of those factors? Is there something else? Or is some wise old sage going to show up in 3 decades and go, no, this is what happened? What's our best guess as what has gone wrong with Britain's youth?
Yeah, so I don't think there's kind of a single silver bullet. I think there's a kind of confluence of different issues. So, I mean, one of the things that Milburn does quite well in his review is sort of show how there's this system-wide failure, which is a kind of classic bureaucratic government mess, where there's lots of people dealing with little bits of a young person's journey from childhood into working adulthood, but there's no one sort of looking over that end-to-end process. And for most young people, that's not an issue. For 90% of young people, they have a strong, stable family. They have kind of people around them who can show them how to work, how to show up, how to kind of be work ready. But for kind of the 10% of young people who don't have that kind of lack of a clear pipeline means that they end up becoming neat, as we kind of keep seeing. And so there's that structural problem, which is, an education system that is overly focused on getting young people to university and doesn't really have anything to say for young people who don't.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, we've got a healthcare system that looks at the health issue, but doesn't see the wider social factors around work and participation and how that actually can help treat young people. And then we have a welfare system that's focused on just give them money and don't really get them back to work. And all of that fits together with then this rise in employment costs and the immediate issues we're seeing.
Listen, great to have you on with us, Ben. Thank you. Ben Gregg, Head of Welfare for the Centre for Social Justice. Thank you to him. What is why would companies be employing non-EU migrants as distinct from Brits? Are the Brits not going for the jobs? Is there something that is just better about the work ethic of a kid, when I say a kid, I don't know, 18, 20-year-old that comes from another country? I mean, what is happening there? So an Australian kid, an American kid, an Indian kid, a Kiwi kid, whatever, is the work ethic just better in those groups? Is it as simple as that? I do wonder about expectation. And I think that is a factor. When I was, at school, and although I did little kind of job, worked in, Iceland and the Chippy, we mentioned a lot about that this week. But I always remember going to, for some reason, when we got to about 16 and you start thinking about buying a car, it became, I've just remembered this, became a bit of a thing to go to Halfords and look at Haynes manuals. They still sell those things. I don't know what it was. It was kind of pornography for our era. Oh, look at that. Have you seen there's a right tasty Ford Escort on the 3rd row? Pull the book down, have a little shuffle through the pages, and there it was, everything you needed to know. But my point was this, and of course when you wanted a bike, there's only really Halfords and stuff. It was absolutely Halfords. I thought, this is not a bad place to work in, is it? And the one round our way, because Halfords are big now, aren't they? They're big usually on those kind of industrial parks where there's a Pets at Home, a Halfords and a Range, and a few other bits and pieces sometimes thrown in. But Halfords looked like, I thought, that's a bit of a tasty job, isn't it? Working in Halfords. You've got the bikes, you've got the car stuff. They sold batteries for cars, so they got a bit more technical as you went to the back of the store. The shiny brand new bike. I mean, how glorious was a brand new bike to a kid? It just looked like magic. Wow. Now, looking at my 12 and a half year old, and I don't imagine when he's 16, he will have that experience of Halfords. We almost had to drag him in one in order to buy him a bike not that long ago. He's not easily impressed, our lad. So he's got a kid of... He's not really a kid of few words, but he doesn't show, like, massive, like, wow, that's amazing. It's like, oh yeah, it's good. It's good. It's very laid back, which may be a good thing going forward. It may be something we have to call the psychiatrist for. We'll understand as the years go on. Maybe when he's 40 and howling at the moon in the back garden, we'll say, I think there's something wrong. Maybe. I don't know. But nonetheless, I can't imagine him going in Halfords going, yeah, that's a good job, Dad. Brilliant. Bloody Halfords. What all work there for? So I think my point is expectations have changed in terms of what is attractive, what looks like a future. Do you want to spend 8 hours a day, I guess, working in, you know, Halfords or the pet shop, wherever it happens to be, for little more than minimum wage? Do you want to do that every day? That once upon a time, not that long ago, would have just been, well, that's what you do. You don't have to do it forever. You can look around and you can work your way up within that company or just end up doing something completely different. But it's a sort of starting point. I think the starting point has disappeared. The idea that you would have to surrender some of your time and your ideal enthusiasm for a job that isn't necessarily the one you want, I think that bit's been removed. There you go. There's a bit of analysis. Is that in Milburn's report? If it's not, it should be. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note. Back to benefits. Here's one from Darren. Morning, Darren.
Good morning, Ian. People out of work and non-benefits. How about everybody's moaning that this place is always full of litter? They have to pick litter up or they don't get the benefits. It's not a hard job. Give them a high-vis, let them wander around with a litter picker. As long as they get a couple of bags a day, happy days, they get the benefits. I don't see the problem with that. And everybody would be a lot happier that the place is cleaner. Have a great show, mate.
Thank you very much indeed, Darren, for that. Yeah, you do wonder about that initiative. I don't know whether it's too much of a faff for governments to put in place. When I come into work doing the early morning shift, I'm in a cab. It's the only way for all of us to get into work. I'm in a cab and so you get a kind of look of, in this case, London, but it could be any city. When you go through the Old Kent Road and these roads and journeys that I've known forever of my adult life, because I've always done those kind of routes, and you look at the state of some places, some just need a lick of paint and someone to pick the litter up outside. I mean, seriously, some of them are just, there are eateries, and you think, you know, do you know what put the fear of God into me just this morning? Well, I looked out the car window and I saw the sign, Old Kent Road Dentist, and I thought, there's an irony. And the litter that's sort of around the place, and you just thought, that's just a case of someone tidying up. That's not even, it's not a borough that needs to be asking for multi-millions of pounds worth of taxpayers' money. Whoever owns the building where the dentist or the, you know, the takeaway or the clothes shop, whatever it happens to be, whoever owns that building, paint it. Paint the bloody thing. Just whip out your Dulux, mate, and give it a lick of paint. It'll look 10 times better. And then if we get as Darren just said, get a few kids around at night when it's all quiet. You know, the bin men work 24/7 in big cities. They don't come at 9:30 on a Friday. They're out all the time. But there's all the other stuff as well. Just get the litter picked up, paint the buildings. That place will look 1,000 times better instantly. But we don't have that, and it all kind of feeds into that whole issue of self-respect in where you live. Phil's in Hertfordshire on young people. Phil, what have you got for us? Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Ian. Yeah, I work at a college and I also run my own business. We do heating, plumbing, air conditioning. We do deal with apprentices, and now I'm not going to say that they are all the same, because they're not. We do get occasionally some very enthusiastic, bright people through.
Yeah.
However, the majority are, for want of a better word, withdrawn. They don't communicate. They can't communicate. I actually had one lad, I couldn't actually understand what he was saying, and he just grunted. So I just told him to text me the answer.
You had to ask him to text you?
I had to ask him to text me because I could not understand his handwriting.
Wow.
He wasn't coherent when he was speaking. I said, look, just text me. And he texted it through. Now, where did it all start going wrong? I don't know. Was it back in the 80s? Do you remember when people were saying, "Oh, you can't touch me, I know my rights"?
Yeah.
When all that started to come in, I think that could have been the start of it, because them kids have now had children of their own, and this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the fruits of a rotten tree. And what's happening, it's now spreading in. Now, these lads and some girls, I don't even know if they want to be there. I don't know how they got there, but they got interviewed and the company sent them through. And, you know, we say to some of these people, "What do you do at night?" "Oh, we just sit in our room." What do you mean you just sit in your room? "Well, we just sit in a room and game." "Do you not go out?" "No." "Do you talk to anybody?" "No." And we try and get across to them that once. A massive problem, and it reflects what Charlie was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And I can resound totally with that, because part of the game, and Charlie would agree, is communication. When you're in them trades, you have to speak to the customer, because that's half your job.
Yep.
Finding out what's going wrong. It's like you're investigating the problem. And if these people can't speak, how are they going to do the job?
It's interesting. Do you remember, Phil, when you were a kid, after you'd had your dinner, or your tea as we used to call it, when the lights were bright, how fast you wanted to finish your dinner so you could get out on your bike and go off and meet your mates?
Take your dinner with you and the plate in, wouldn't you, on your bike?
Yeah, you'd do any of that. You know, it's like you couldn't wait to finish it, because you're going to go and meet your mate wherever, and you get your bike and off you'd go. And you don't think of time back then. You would probably have to be back at 7:30 or something, but it seemed late, you know. And even if it was a school night, it was cool. Obviously, you don't do that when you're 7 or 8, but when you're 13, 14, you do that sort of stuff. Now, a kid today, I don't think has that they want to finish their dinner because they want to go to their bedroom.
Yeah, they want to get online, and that's
because going to your room is not a punishment anymore, right?
No, absolutely. And the problem, I think, as well, where the communication possibly comes into it, is because the parents don't communicate, so it's learned behaviour.
Yeah.
So they're probably all sitting around at the dinner table or in the front room, and neither of them are talking. Nobody's talking to each other. They're just head buried in the phone.
Yeah.
You know, like streaming and whatever is they're doing. So there's no communication. There's nothing. So of course, learnt behaviour. The kid sees, "Oh, that's how it's done. That's what I do."
Yeah.
But we explain to them, you can't carry that out in society if you want to get on.
Yeah.
And when we try and get it across to them, look, you can have a job for life. And again, it's what Charlie said. It's such a good trade. You can have a job for life. You've got to work hard, but you'll earn some good money. You'll never be out of work. And they're just like, they shrug their shoulders. It's like, is there anybody in there actually, realising what they've got?
Yeah.
But it is a problem.
I'd like to think we're going to go through another evolution where it all kind of goes back, but I don't know how quick. I mean, that might take a couple of decades. Who knows? Phil, great call. Thank you, mate. Have a lovely weekend. Phil in Hertfordshire. 0344 499 1000, 20 to 10. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Yeah, just gone 20 to 10. Welcome. Good morning. It's the home of common sense. Alex Phillips will be at 10 o'clock, diligently out there working in our newsroom for what's going to be a big show at 10. She's got a lot to say. 0344 499 1000. Jill says, when the doctors say the poorest would get treatment free, that obviously means benefit recipients. However, it's been proven that so many on benefits are better off than workers, so it wouldn't be fair. It's a bit like when they didn't want wages to go up, but they wanted, so if you were a copper or a teacher, you wouldn't get a pay increase, but you would get an increase if you were on unemployment benefits because of the cost of living. And that was all shades of weirdness, wasn't it? So hang on a sec, what? So if I don't work, I get an increase in my welfare check, but if I do work, I don't get an increase. Really? This is a messed up world. Let's get a word from Ken Mastris, who's Director of Tackle Prostate Cancer, which we were discussing a little earlier on. Good morning to you, Ken. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning, Ian. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, you too. We were talking about, particularly that front page of the Daily Mail decision that will condemn thousands to death. This, of course, is thousands of men, it should say, of course, to death, to be more specific. Furious health advisors reject calls for mass prostate cancer screening. We spoke to one doctor a little earlier, and who said, and I don't know what you think of this, Ken, that it's not as straightforward as it sounds. Mass screening sounds like the answer, but it can cause a problem as well, because so many people that you screen won't have a problem, but they might have to be pursued medically. That could be invasive, it could be time consuming, and it could even be dangerous to the patient. What do you say to that interpretation, if you like?
Well, from my point of view, I think we need a customised risk-based screening system. There is some flaws in the current system, but we have to agree that there's 12,000 people die each year, and we need to reduce the number of deaths. And what the screening committee have done is really looking at an old system where it's been done in the past. We have got the high-risk people like the black men, the men with family history that we need to screen. But the question is, how do we do it? We've got better tools now than we did in the past. We've got MRI, we've got AI. And I think the over-treatment that's being quoted is not as high as it was in the past. I think things have changed.
Interesting.
And the way you diagnose prostate cancer, and screening does save lives.
Of course.
And basically, I think awareness is the way forward.
And of course, what is, I mean, there are, cancers differ depending on where they are, of course, and some are aggressive and incredibly fast and pretty much unstoppable. And that's very sad when somebody suffers from one of those. Prostate cancer, on a good day, once caught early, is remarkably, the results are remarkably successful in treatment. I've lost count of how many times. A fellow I was talking to literally 2 days ago had prostate cancer last year. Absolutely fine, tickety-boo, caught early, sorted. You constantly hear that story. So this is a cancer that is treatable, but of course it requires you to know you've got it in order to be able to treat it.
Yeah, I mean, prostate cancer is curable if it's caught early. And I think that is the course that most prostate cancer patients say, that if we try and catch it early, we save lives. And also, we save money for the NHS to treat and advance prostate cancers, thousands a year. I mean, if you look at it from a cost saving, whilst I appreciate there is a small element of over-treatment, but if each man can demand a PSA test from a GP, and then be counselled for the truth, and make his own decision.
Is there any sense that, I mean, because there seems to be a sort of bit of I don't want to use the word battle, because that would be wrong when, we're talking about people's lives and cancer and stuff, but there's certainly a difference of opinion. Is there a kind of happy medium on any of this? I mean, has it got better? I had a blood test the other day. I had a general blood test, which included the name escapes me, but you'll be able to tell me, to check for prostate. That's the one. And it was, everything was fine. That doesn't happen. I mean, we've spoken to people before that said they've gone to their doctor and asked for this, and the doctor has said they can't do it. I mean, what's the deal there? I happen to have it because it was part of a wider blood test.
I think we have to educate the GPs. I think some GPs follow the guidelines. Some are very anti-PSA testing, others are pro. I think, to me, a PSA is just the baseline. It's just the start. It's not the end of all things. One size doesn't fit all.
Yeah. Are we making progress to where we were, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, or has it sort of
I think
somehow remained stubbornly static.
As a patient advocate, I've been doing this for 20-odd years, and I've been involved in European as a patient advocate as well. And I can see things have improved in Europe. We're catching up, I think, in the UK, but I think with new technology and new awareness campaigns, I think we can achieve better results.
Yeah, I think we can. And, it's very helpful when, I know it shouldn't be down to high-profile people, but when it happens, it does bring it into the headlines. Stephen Fry, a few years ago, had prostate cancer. There was a famous politician quite recently, whose name escapes me now.
We have David Cameron.
That's right, David Cameron. Yeah, indeed. So you have those stories, and it does bring people out to say, right, OK, I wasn't really thinking about it, but I've hit a certain age, maybe I should get this checked out. That's good, unless you hit a brick wall where the doctor says, sorry, we can't even give you a blood test.
That's correct. I think the high-profile people do make an impact for a short period of time.
Yeah, good point.
And it just disappears in the background.
Yeah.
We look at the work done by PCR for the guidelines and PCUK fighting for the cause. But while we're waiting for the Transform study run by PCUK and the Praise You study from Europe, we can't wait as patients. We can't wait 10 years for a result. We need action now, and we need to save the lives of those people dying each year and the families that suffer with them.
Indeed. Listen, on that point, lovely to have you on with us, Ken. Great advice as well. And let's keep, hammering that point home and hope things change for the better. Ken Masteris is Director of Tackle Prostate Cancer. And there will be, every time we've ever talked about this on air, you could fill a switchboard with. I know it's not the liveliest subject. It's not the one that most people are thinking about when they kick their quilt off their feet in the morning. I understand all of that. But when you're there and you realise the chronic lack, the criminal lack there has been, it's got better. But we talk a lot about women's health in comparison to men's health. Breast cancer is discussed more regularly than you can imagine, and yet not as regularly as it should be, some would say. But when it comes to prostate cancer, we're only just really seeing the headlines. 0344 499 1000.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
I'm
loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note. We're talking about work ethic. This comes from Russell. Morning, Russell.
The problem we've got with these kids not going to work is because of that 18-year-old education thing. I know plenty of my friends that left school at 15, 16, went to worked as a labourer for a bricklayer or a labourer for a chippy, who have now got their own businesses and are thriving and doing really well. Professional bricklayers that's bought on lads from themselves, chippies, bought on chippies by themselves, family members, their trade. That was early 80s, but that's the problem. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Russell. I'm going to play you this Nicola Sturgeon clip again because it's just too delicious not to play. You know, they always say there's always a tweet. There's always a clip as well. This is a beauty. So, as we know, Nicola Sturgeon has said it's been the worst week of her life. I think her old man might actually give her a run for her money on that because he's sitting in C Wing at the moment waiting for what's clearly going to be a fairly, I would imagine, significant custodial sentence. This was an interview. So bearing in mind, this is Peter Murrell, the fellow who trousered 400,000 quid worth of SNP donors' cash and went on a spending spree like no other over many years, including a brand new Jag, a motorhome, salt and pepper crystal set costing thousands, watches, a onesie, Grand Theft Auto game, a PS3. I mean, the list went on. Pogo stick, God knows what else. And even an oak library ladder. He couldn't stop himself. Anyway, so we found this clip that actually comes from 2022 when Nicola Sturgeon appeared on Newsround. Not Newsnight, Newsround. You know when they do that, let's get some kids to meet politicians and the kids can ask them questions because that's very natural. It's not really, but nonetheless, for the purposes of what's happened subsequently, this clip is just very telling. Have a listen.
Well, on that note, Kevin, do you want to ask your question to the First Minister? Go for it.
How has the cost of living crisis affected your household?
But, Kevin, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that somebody like me in the job I do, which is, you know, paid well by comparison to lots of people across the country, I'm experiencing the cost of living crisis in the same way that many other people are, because I think if I was to pretend that that was the case, you would look at me and think, are you sure? Nevertheless, and the other admission I have to make here straight up is that my husband does most of the shopping in my household, so, but, you know, he notices, like everybody else does, the way things are going up in price in the supermarkets.
Yes, her husband does most of the shopping. Well, we know that. He certainly does, and he doesn't do it by halves either. He'll be queuing up at the prison shop right now. Could I have 147 bags of Quavers, please? I might be here sometime. We asked the question on the back of that clip, and we now know that Nicola Sturgeon has said it's been the worst week of her life. We asked, you know, what's been the worst week or the worst day of your life? Because we all have those days that have that kind of domino effect. Trev in Boston says, on that subject, I live here in Boston and the norm around here is ride your bike on the pavements regardless of anyone else. I've been clipped 3 times now, and my last encounter was with a girl of no more than 14 years of age who I stopped. When I asked her why she was on the pavement and not on the road, her response was, because my dad won't let me. I told her to get on the road, otherwise I'll call the police. But I decided against it due to police nowadays not doing their job properly. So I decided to let her go on her way, to which I got a mouthful of bad language and abuse. There you go. You're just trying to do the right thing, is our Trev. You can't ride on a pavement. When I was a kid, everybody rode on the pavement, didn't they? Nobody rode on the road. It was ridiculous, the bloody road. What would you want to get your bike on there for? It's got cars on it. And now, Alex Phillips, they say, no, they have equal status on the road. Well, they might have equal status, but I know which one I'd feel safer in, and I know which one I'd feel more vulnerable on.
I hate cyclists.
Well, you're so brutal, Phillips.
Although I like the idea that when you were kids, everyone just cycled on the pavement. Well, because there were no roads. You might get trapped under the wheels of a horse and cart.
That's right, yes.
A handsome
I remember.
carriage.
Then the Romans came along and we watched from afar.